Good evening and welcome to Speakers Corner UK channel, where we used to do videos in Speakers Corner, but now because I live 200 miles away plus COVID, etc., unfortunately I don't get down to Speakers Corner. But what we will be doing is continuing on with the EFDawah review of the Hamza Den video, and we'll be doing a review, continue our review of their review of the Hamza Den stream. So we're going to carry on straight away. I want to welcome in, of course, my, as always, co-host, both on the Gin and Tonic and here. Good evening, Stops. How are you, sir?
Hello. Going straight. I'm trying to copy Hamza's voice, but I can't. I can't get that high.
No, I'm afraid not. By the way, just because I saw some guy reviewing like martial arts movies recently, if you want to know what an alpha male looks like, go onto YouTube, or maybe I'll find it at some point, and look up this Navy SEAL, Jocko Willink, and you should see the comments underneath. If you haven't seen, what's his name, the karate guy from the US, what's his name, Chuck Norris, right? Obviously, you've got all these memes with Chuck Norris, right? But if you go and look at the ones with Jocko Willink, who's a bona fide SEAL team commander and just about the toughest MO that you would ever want to come across, see the comments on. I go back there once in a while just to see what people write there. It's hilarious, but you just see like he walks you through the movies and stuff because he's done it all in real life and stuff. That's the guy that you want on your side. If you think alpha male, then to me, I think Jocko Willink, he's the dude, right? He's one of those sort of guys that just like is fearless or pretty much close to it. So just a random thought, but because it was the karate thing, and you were talking about the highness of the voice and stuff, so it came to me. I was busy. They were, and plus they just went into things. So good evening. Yeah. So I listened into a little bit of EFDawah. They just went on long rants there. They had T-Jump on. He never actually even got to speak. They kicked him off, and then they had other people on there that were of no interest. So that was from the little bit that I heard at least, that was a completely pointless EFDawah thing. What was there to do there? Plus I had dinner at that stage. I don't know why they do it 6 p.m. in the UK. I mean, who's going to be around 6 p.m.? Most people having dinner or family time or whatever the case is. Do it late in the evening or whatever. But anyway, the bits that I heard, yeah, it was a very weak one at all. And they didn't have anybody sort of strong to contest anything there. And they just went on long sort of rambles and rants, really, that didn't have much meaning. And the only person that I would have wanted to speak to would have been Tortoise. I wasn't really interested in speaking to Hijab. And Imran, I think, sat pretty quietly throughout the whole thing anyway.
There was only 3 of them. That's why they were so scared that they blocked me. I was backstage. I managed to get backstage. And then they immediately blocked me. I was kicked out and couldn't join anymore. So this is, because there was only 3 of them, they were so shit scared they had to block me.
Maybe it needs 5 or something like that, right? But according to one Muslim, that TDS Dave was having a nice long text conversation with in one of the videos, any one of those guys would, quote, run rings around us. I'm not too sure what ring he's referring to, but I guess he's of the view that somehow these guys have got tremendous amount of knowledgeable, intelligent things to say that either we can't answer or can't find answers to. But hey, everybody's entitled to their illusion, I guess. But with that said, let's get straight into it because there's a lot to do. We'll see how far we get with this. I'm not sure if we get all the way through, but we'll see where we get.
By the way, one thing I want to mention though, and that is because this Hamza guy, this Redbeard guy, this ginger, he commented and said, well, he is excluding in all his invitations that he's blocking all the people from the Gin and Tonic show because he said we are full of hate and the whole channel is only about attacking Islam. Now, number 1, it's not true. Number 2, it's not true. Number 3, it's a lie. And number 4, the reaction is that I'm now doing a whole series on this bloke. Okay, I'm now, because it's a one-way street, because he's not allowing a dialogue, he's not allowing anything, I will take the facts and I would expose him this way. Because normally, if he would just have a dialogue, just a couple of people see it. Now it's a couple of thousand. So, it's a little bit of a Streisand effect what he's doing. He doesn't understand what he's doing, and this is the effect that they are having. Because they are not allowing a dialogue, we have to look at other avenues, and they are more detrimental for the people because Islam is getting a hammering at the moment. So if they don't want to answer the the obvious, and if they don't want to defend the accusations being launched at the moment, well, it's their problem, not mine. I don't care. And I don't care if a Muslim needs to have a God, well, so be it. I don't care. Just don't lie and don't make your problems my problems. That's it.
Yeah, and it's all subjective anyway. They can't argue for it. It's a bit like hate speech, right? Islamophobia, attacking, whatever. This is all just
And
their
racism and
unsubstantiated.
everything, yeah.
Yeah, it's all just their unsubstantiated opinion. They couldn't make an objective argument for it. So, I don't take it particularly seriously. But on that note, let's get straight on into it. So let's go full screen so you guys can all see it. And so we carry on exactly where we left off. If you go to part 1, you'll see that we ended at 43:39. So I'm continuing on directly from there. So you can always follow on from there. Here we go. You just shout stops when you want to, otherwise I'll stop as well. So we'll see how we get on. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. But again, and it led us on to the next point, because I asked a very simple question: that if a creator exists, a theistic creator exists, would that creator know man better than himself? Would he know what would harm and what would benefit? And so maybe I used the word morality, and it got latched onto. Now, then you get this idea of an evil God. Is it by someone called Stephen Law or something? That I've been bombarded with the Stephen Law flex.
It came from Descartes.
My question was very simple. Would this creator know what would benefit us, whether or not he chose to tell us what would benefit us?
Okay, let's just stop there. So again, there's a flaw in the question here. Would the creator know what benefit? It depends what you mean by benefit. And how do you establish what a benefit is? Unless you have some sort of objective standard that everybody agrees to, including the creator, all you're really saying is that the creator, quote, knows its creation and whatever he thinks will benefit him. Well, why should anybody accept what he thinks? And it's a fallacy to say that because he created us. That's a non sequitur. It doesn't follow that because he created us, therefore he knows what is objectively good. And we can easily present an analogy. So if you made, for example, a highly intelligent robot, think of iRobot from the movie, and the creator of that robot, who's to say that he gave the robot the perfect morality or knows exactly what is, quote, benefit for him? There's no way to establish that unless you appeal to something else. And if you do that, of course, then you're appealing outside of God, and God is not necessary. And of course, as we know with Euthyphro, if you appeal to God itself, then that's just an arbitrary thing. You've got to establish something else. That's why Stops and T-Jump and everybody else said that even if a God existed, they would accept that a God existed if there was overwhelming evidence, but they wouldn't just accept its moral commands or whatever the case may be. It would have to demonstrate why. And so, again, it's built into the premise, and he does this a lot, right? So there's a lot of this built into the premise that because God created us, therefore he will know what benefit us. No. That's what you've got to argue for. So it's begging the question.
Well, also, the whole point is utter bullshit. I mean, it's so unthinking. This is just parroting without understanding it. If you think we are creating cars with self-drive capabilities, do we know what's best for them? No, they're crashing. We build batteries, to drive, to power these cars. Do we know whether they should be at 80, 90, 60, 50 or whatever percent? No, we are still unsure. Nobody really knows at this moment what is the best treatment for those batteries. So there are a lot of inconsistencies in creating something and then saying, well, now you know best because you created it. Definitely not.
Of course, they'll just respond by saying, well, God knows best because he's all-knowing. But even if we were to suppose that he's all-knowing, that's not a justification. Again, that's a non sequitur as to whether whatever God says is good. How do we establish what the good is? This is the fact-value distinction, that from Hume, that's been around forever. And, I was sort of the view that Harris had broached that, but on much deeper reflection, I've come to the conclusion that hasn't been done, and it hasn't been done with the God either. So there we go. But again, we'll hopefully we'll get a chance to speak to some of these guys to put that point across.
Because
Go ahead.
I hear this a lot, I don't know why suddenly they've latched onto this Euthyphro dilemma. And they have this guy who's okay, it's not his fault, all right, he's ill, all right, he's got a mental illness, but he went totally berserk, and they're taking him off the circuit now because he's too dangerous for them, because he's really mad. And he made a video, and he said, well, this dilemma is not actually a dilemma, and I will refute it in 10 seconds. And he says, well, it's not a dilemma, it's not valid, there you go, I've refuted it within 10 seconds. And you can't do that. There are Christians who say, well, it's not in the nature of God to do that, so of course he's only doing it one way and the only way, and that is the best way. No, that is not the point. The point of the Euthyphro dilemma is really something that you can never get out of your system as long as you have gods who interfere with whatever system you have here, because you never know which way it is, which way around it is. You cannot get over this. And I don't know why people can't simply believe it, can't simply accept it and say, oh, okay, it's a dilemma, we will never know. And just
it stops because they take the view that God is good without being able to demonstrate it, because he said so he is. And obviously that's tautologist and circular. But if God says so, then he must be the case. Or if I define God to mean a being that is only good, well, sure, you can define anything you want, but you've still got to demonstrate it, because nobody else is necessarily going to accept that. And the other point is, and of course, I'm sure Stephen Law's gone into it at such a high level anyway. I mean, he's a professional philosopher. He used to be a postman and became a philosopher, so anything's possible, right? And he's quite well known as well. He's done lots of papers. He's done the not the X theory. There's another paper that I read, and I just can't think of the name now. It was a year or so ago. That was unique and was something new that he brought to philosophy as well. So he's a professional philosopher, not somebody that's just on the side of the street. That I mean, okay, sure, Hamza might not have heard of him. That's fair enough, but he is a fairly well known if you look him up, and he's got plenty of citations and so forth. So, and of course, it falls prey to the whole thing of, well, that's exactly what an evil, Satan or an evil being would want you to believe. So I've never heard anybody being able to overcome that, but we'll see.
Would he know? Would it know at that point in time without religion and such? Would it know what would benefit us, what would harm us? And the answer is yes. So if we can connect to that creator and judge that standard of right and wrong or good and bad or benefit and harm on the one who created us, surely that's a rational thing to do. And again, it went back to the idea of, again, to our eagle and rabbit.
Rob, can you just stop a second? There's a comment at the bottom. What's the consequence that God faces for burning people alive for eternity? Now, he puts that question out there, and please note, nobody answers it, and he asks the question a couple of times. This will repeat a couple of times. This question will come back, and they will not be able to answer it.
And of course, the answer is that there is no consequences, of course, because the God is the ultimate judge. So whatever he does, he doesn't face any consequences. Why? Because he's all powerful and all knowing. So they can easily get out of that with a trite statement like that. I mean, that's not satisfying to any of us. Yeah, well, when you add all merciful, wow, now you've got a problem. And I pointed this out to Yusuf Ponders, right? I haven't seen if he's actually responded, because I don't go on Twitter every day. But I responded to him on Twitter about this sort of thing. And he gave, the standard response. And I pointed out that wasn't sufficient. And I explained why. I haven't seen if he's responded to me or not. But he's probably the only one out of the six guys here. I say that. I don't know what Ben does, the guy on the bottom right. But of the other four, or of the five that took part to whatever degree, he's probably the guy that I would have actually most wanted to have the conversation with. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know much about him. So
when you can tell it, because you don't like the way the rabbit gets killed by the eagle, nature's wrong. Because surely at that point then, I don't keep repeating this, but it's got to sink in. I've got to get it. It's got to sink in, right? Surely at that point, nature can't be the objective standard, because surely an objective standard you measure against it. And if you don't match that standard, then you're...
Okay, so we'll just do it, and then I'm going to let him go after this, right? We've said it in multiple videos. Tom Jump's position, not that I'm necessarily defending it, I'm just explaining it as best I understand it, is that there's some law of nature, and coupled with that is the term, what was the term called? The involuntary imposition of will. As soon as a will is imposed upon one conscious creature, or even a non-conscious creature imposes on the will of a conscious creature, that by his lights is immoral. So obviously the eagle jumping on the rabbit is immoral by this natural law that he wants to call it, which is the involuntary imposition of will. So he's completely forgotten about that part of it, and he's latched onto the word nature. And for him, of course, he's confused, and rightly so, because he doesn't understand it. So obviously there's going to be confusion if you haven't grasped the concept. But this definitely threw the guys, and in a way it was kind of a shame, because that sort of went off, and even now they're talking about it for such a long time, and I'm not sure that that's helpful. But if they're going to ask us, we all have something that some model presumably that we judge things right and wrong, and that was Tom's. And so off they went on it. But it's a shame that he didn't sort of grasp it. But there we go.
All wrong. Yeah? Surely that's what an objective standard is. Am I wrong in that?
Yeah. If you are... Go on, Yusuf.
No, go on, you say, and then I'll...
If you are... I mean, because obviously the argument was obviously without religion. I mean, a deistic God, for instance, would just create and then perhaps not know what's best for you, would you say, and just sort of leave it? So I'm just wondering if then you're sort of going down the...
No, I believe a deistic God would still know, because he created you. Yeah. And a deistic God wouldn't tell you, though. That's the difference. A theistic
it's to do with the lack of communication.
Okay, so you're saying a creator would know. Yeah, okay.
They both know, both paradigms. One tells you, one doesn't. And then you can also argue, is he telling you the truth or not? But whether he knows or not is not a question to be questioned, I don't think, personally, if a theistic God exists or a deistic.
Okay, so the confusion here is that a perfect creator would know you better than yourself, i.e. how you created, etc., etc. But that's not the question, of course. The question is, would what he says be good, and how do we establish that? And obviously, as we've said, it's not because he created you. There must be some other reason. And that's the part that Hamza doesn't get.
They don't understand the question, because, once again, we can see that the atheist can put themselves or him or herself into the brain of a theist, but not the other way around. They simply cannot understand the point.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody's at that sort of level, right? So there are theists that do understand and have got objections, etc., that are more substantial, in the sense that they're more. Firstly, they fully understand that the points that are being raised, and then they'll bring up objections that actually are worth talking about. But if you don't understand it, then obviously you bring up false objections.
A Muslim got rattled when I asked, "Does God know what gay sex feels like?"
Yeah, I mean, again, an omniscient God would know everything, right? That's what it means to be omniscient, is to know everything possible. That's logically possible. Yeah, would God know what a married bachelor is? No, because that's illogical. So again, at a higher level, anything that's logically possible. Would God know what it's like to rape, to poop, whatever the case is? That's what omniscience means, right? I mean, obviously, it's something that, as you say, would rattle them, because they have a. But if you dig deeper, then you see that it's entailed by what you believe, not something that you would have been taught or thought about. But as soon as somebody else brings it up, of course, it may be a bit shocking, but it's certainly entailed, as you mentioned.
God exists. It would know the benefits and harms for its creation. What's good and what's bad for it.
The only thing you can say necessarily about the deistic God is when we're talking about the language of good and evil, from a deistic framework, there isn't necessarily this concept of good and evil.
Yeah, I didn't say good or evil. I just said harm and benefit.
Yeah.
Well, how's that different from good and evil? How do you establish what is harm and what is benefit? What's your standard for establishing that? It's synonymous in this context.
But then harm or benefit to what scale?
To a human being. So if he does this thing to his body, or he does this particular action in his life, it could lead to some harmful consequence. Yeah. And if he does this beneficial thing and follows these beneficial guidance.
There we go. This is a comment. I don't know if you want to comment on this particular comment that came up here. But
well, I was surprised because I wrote this tongue-in-cheek, and they didn't realize that this is me. So this is.
I didn't want to say that. I wanted, that's why I specifically said at the moment, here's a comment you might want to comment on, not necessarily saying that this was you, because obviously they might block you with this.
I don't care. Come on. Do I care about these Muppets anymore? No, I don't. I'm just going to do my own thing. If they want to go and slander and like twist this into hatred and stuff like this, which they're doing, they're bringing out this emergency stop button Islamophobia and stuff like this. That means I don't stand a chance there. They're not interested. I don't get it. And I'm now openly propagating this, that this is one of my channels. Yes, okay. I opened it for a very, very different reason, but I'm not really using it. I'm just using it in cases like this. I've got more channels than this one that they don't know about. But this was just something doesn't get it. It's about because I'm trying to point out to people on the panel, it's about the claim. Okay, it's not about the absolute, it's not about the people, it's not about whatever that we see in reality, it's about the claim. We need to go and compare the claim to reality, and then we can get somewhere. But this I don't know, jibber jabber around, and you know, a lot of times you hear, yeah, but Muslims are such nice people. That's not the point. It's about the claims, comparing it to the reality. And this is why if I look at a wasp that has larvae eating an insect inside out, then I'm sure there should be a better solution if this is an all-knowing, merciful God. And that's all I'm pointing out. But I don't think they actually got it, even though I thought I was being very clear. Actually, Abbas later on refers to this. So there is a reference later on about the wasp, so he did read it.
Yeah.
Then it will lead to positive and good things in his life.
But we're not just talking, when we speak of morality, we're not just talking about the individual, though. We're talking about the society whole scale.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
certain moral claims, you know, that someone might find them quote unquote painful. Like some people really struggle fasting, for example. And, you know, despite the fact that they're struggling, despite the fact that they're not enjoying it, it's, you know, it's still a moral law. It's still, you know, incumbent upon them to practice that. And the reason is, but it's not necessarily, they might not even necessarily see the benefits that they're incurring from it.
No,
personally.
you don't have to in the paradigm. Just as it doesn't see the benefits in wearing
why so
hijab,
quick?
for example.
Yeah.
What's that?
Why so quick? This was a good comment. It should have stayed there.
Yeah, we know that when we look at things that we can rationalize, like alcohol, drugs, gambling, and all these things, and we see the detriment in society from it. Now, the hijab might be a harder thing to see the benefits and harm from. But because it's come from the same source, the same standard, we know there must be good in it. There must be some guidance in it. Why are we praying 5 times a day? There must be.
Yeah. I mean, he's begging the question there, obviously, against that position. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe Yusuf Ponders can explain it to him, because he won't accept it. There'll be a block if I try and explain it, or you do, or somebody else that's non-Muslim. So maybe Yusuf can quietly speak to him and at least get him to understand it, because at the moment he has no clue, really no clue about it.
Something beneficial in it, because we believe the standard of where it's coming from. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Can I just quickly deal with those two comments that came up? One about burning in hell, and the other one about the wasp. Basically, I think people should worry less about making judgments about decisions that God has made, and worry more about first whether God exists or doesn't exist.
Okay, let's just.
Yeah. He really does not understand it.
Yeah, so again, this is what's called an internal critique. We've mentioned it before. It's saying, okay, let's suppose the things that you believe are the case, i.e. that your God exists and this happened and so forth. Now let's critique it on that basis, in the sense of, if we were a critically thinking person in your world that accepted that God existed, what would we expect to see? How would we evaluate those things? So that critique is only relevant if somebody was doing an external critique. But if we're doing an internal, which is often what we do, even though we don't label it as such or talk about it per se, then we're talking about it as if this God existed for the sake of the discussion, and then going, okay, what's the logical entailments of this God existing? So obviously that's mistaken in this particular context.
Did God actually say those things or not? Now, you might not agree with them. They might not sit on your heart, and you might not be able to accept those things. But the issue here is, it's more important for you to first ascertain whether God exists and whether God said those things. Because if he did say those things, and you can rationally arrive at a position that God exists, then God's given you the tools necessary to be able to escape that punishment. In fact, we are...
Even you don't know if you can escape that punishment. So your claim is one that sounds great on the surface, but you yourself don't know whether you can escape it. So these tools aren't perfect tools, and there's no guarantee. So it's just as much, a crapshoot for you as it is for us. You just think that, you've got better chances, but you haven't demonstrated that in any way. And again, it's not about whether God exists. For the sake of the discussion, we're accepting that there's some sort of God, and he said what he said in the book. Now we want to establish how do we evaluate this.
Argue from an Islamic point of view that atheism is an acquired position. It's not your default position.
Okay, yeah, that's a claim that you've got to defend. Let's see if you can actually make a defense of that claim, because the counter for you, or the opposite for you, is that everybody's born a Muslim, and I'm satisfied that claim has been refuted. So I want to hear your argument for why you think that atheism is not the default position.
Created in belief. You were created as a believer. All the studies prove it, that even a child that believes in a higher power. Atheism is an acquired position.
Do you want to deal with that, or shall I? I mean, he's still parroting this years later, right? This, to me, now borders on dishonesty. This has been refuted. These studies from Oxford University with Petrovich and what's the guy's? Barrett, right? We've gone through it. I've done it when I refuted Sabur's claims in the park as well. It's on my channel if you look back, where I did those refutation videos Sabur, and we quoted the exact term. Even Barrett himself says that he's not claiming that there's a God, right? Even though he's obviously funded by the Templeton Foundation, whose primary motive is to reconcile science and religion. So there's certainly a good reason for him to try and find them, but that's what they're trying to base this off. Again, it's available, widely available. We don't need to go into the depths here. Suffice to say that claim is not true, and yet he continues to make this claim years later. I bet you if I actually brought out the evidence and said it, he would dance around it and probably give it a month or two, he'd say the same thing. And that's, for me, is really painful, that you can show these guys evidence that this claim is not what they're claiming it to be. They'll just give it a little while, and either they won't accept it, and they'll just come parroting it back again later to somebody that they hope hasn't heard it.
That comes later. And Allah says, and I think Sabur brought it up last time, that when the people will be dragged to the hellfire, the angels will say to them, it was because you didn't reason, because you didn't think, you didn't reason. So Allah's given you an opportunity, and that's why I know perhaps you don't want to bring religion into it, but I think it is important because the Quran constantly reminds the person, reason, think. Do you not think? Do you not reason? And so what it means is that if you do sit and you think and you reason with an open heart and an open mind, really there's...
Just explain to me what an open heart is, Stops. I hear this such a lot, and to me that is such a vacuous statement. What is that supposed to mean, in your view?
What, the open heart?
Yeah.
Well, this is from antiquity, where people, I mean, this is something that I think it went all the way up to, Ibn Sina still propagated this. They thought that the brain is just for cooling and that the thinking was done in the heart. So if you have an open heart, it's the same thing as saying an open mind. So that's it, finished.
Only one rational conclusion that you can arrive at. But if you now forcibly deny that existence of the Creator and decide to do whatever you want to do, becoming an opponent to God, a challenger to God, then sorry, but what do you expect?
Yeah.
You might not agree with the punishment. You might not agree that you might say it's very harsh. I'd say, yes, it is very harsh. It's a harsh punishment to burn in hell. Yes, absolutely. But you're given every tool possible to recognize the Creator, the very existence of this universe.
Yeah, this is just rhetoric now, right? He's not answering the question at all.
I just want to point out to people, this is total nonsense. This is dishonesty at its best, because they are completely forgetting the bigger picture that this God created every single human being, knowing full well in advance what was going to happen to them. So this is nonsense.
Yeah, that's the nuclear option that we could always bring out later on. We didn't even need to. We don't even go there at this stage. But if you want to drop the nuclear bomb, then explain how you get away with predestination and libertarian free will. And at that point, of course, they're in huge trouble. But we don't even need to get there, right? He's just not answering the question of how we know God is good, or better still, how does God know God is good?
It screams out to you that a Creator exists. Now, if you forcibly deny that, or keep going into your safe house...
It only screams out to those people whose ears are tuned to hear a particular vibration that the rest of us are missing.
What about the people in the concentration camps? Did they not pray? Did they not scream? Did they not ask for mercy? Did they not beg for mercy?
Well, presumably they weren't Muslims, right?
Millions of people who were enslaved, who were treated like shit, who were killed, who were tortured, who were everything. Do you think all these people really deserved it? Come on, people, please.
Yeah, but they weren't Muslims. I'm sure there would have been one or two in concentration camps, possibly. Who knows?
Your safe zone of saying, well, I don't know, I don't want to think about these things. Well, then blame yourselves, because this is what Allah says in the Quran. Blame yourself. Don't blame Allah.
Does anybody understand my question?
I want to just say that. Sorry. So I was just going to say that this question assumes that. Oh, sorry. There's a big lag.
No, I think the lag's on.
I think there's a delay on yours, Ben. I think.
Is it me? I think it's you, bro. Sorry, man. Won't be long. So
Is it me?
Yeah, it's you. This question's assuming that it's got assumption behind it, I think. So it's assuming that the action that God is punishing people for eternity is a wrong thing. Yeah. So is he claiming that is wrong?
No, Ben, you misunderstand. What we're asking you guys is, how do you establish whether it's right or wrong? From our point of view, as an external critique, we think it's wrong. But if we go into your worldview, we're asking you, how do you establish that it's right or wrong? That's the question that's being asked of you.
And that is immoral. If he is, then he's going to have to prove that. unfortunately.
But God doesn't answer to anybody. That's
the other thing. So like when he's saying what are the consequences, like who's going to hold him to account for anything?
Yeah, see, that's the response one I would expect a Muslim to say. Well, he's unaccountable. Right, there's no consequence. He's the all-knowing. He's the all-wise. He's the ultimate supreme court, for want of a better word. There's nobody else you can appeal to. So any consequences, any sentence that he's done is automatically just because reasons, and that's where the buck stops. Right. So that's what I would expect somebody to say. That's trying to defend this view.
The source of all power.
That's it.
Yeah.
He's the eternal being.
This is what it means.
There is nothing above which. Like there is no holding him accountable for anything.
Like, and it's another emotional argument as well. And it's not a lot.
It's fueled by my Sophism.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Exactly.
Shall we have the link?
No, it's not emotional. It's a rational question.
Exactly.
I'm not sure I would ask that myself because I know what they're going to respond with, but it's certainly not an emotional one. Somebody might say, well, I feel like that's awful or whatever. If they bring a feeling into it, then maybe you could suggest it's emotional, but that seemed like a rational question to me.
Now let the atheist come on.
Yeah, go on. You know what Abbas was saying about the
One
wasp?
second.
Am I still delayed?
Yeah, go on.
No,
I
it's okay.
just want to make another point before we start inviting people on.
Yeah.
go on,
So,
go on.
so what I was saying to Abbas made the point about the wasp, and this is something. It's kind of there's like an arrogance, isn't there? That you, and I mean that in the best way possible. It's called egocentrism, isn't it? It's where you only see the world from your eyes, so you're not even willing to sort of look at it from any other direction. And whether it's the wasp or feeling pain, maybe I cried when I watched the Titanic or anything like that. And to me, to be honest, from I didn't. But from an atheist point of view, just I guess to finish off my point is none of it really matters, does it? If we're all just particles, if we're all just lumps of things put together, even the suffering and pain that's there, what's the?
No, this Jordan M. I mean, he's such a disappointment. I thought he was, quite clever. He could articulate and he could do things, but he's a dumbass. He's a douche. Come on, Jordan, please. How can you say something so stupid, so inane? How is that possible? Why can't you consider the question the way that it was put to you? Is it really the best that a merciful God can come up with? To go and put the larva of another insect into the body of an insect so that it gets eaten alive from inside out? Is that the best solution a merciful God has? That is the question.
Yeah, that's a very strong argument in my view. I've not tested it on these guys, but I don't think they'll have a sufficient response. I mean, Skydive did an amazingly good job against Christian philosophers, so people that collectively these guys wouldn't even be able to stand against, let alone myself probably. But Skydive did a great job on this, and he focused just on animal suffering. And once you do that,
look at the reaction. Look what you're getting.
What's that? What are you talking about?
From Jordan now. Come on, look at this.
Yeah. So he's doing.
There's nothing.
So he's doing a reductionist view, right? We're all just particles in motion.
Exactly.
But if you and this is the thing, right? This is a very uncharitable reductionist view, because I could just as easily say, well, what do you mean particles in reaction? You as opposed to what, a celestial dictator that makes North Korea look like it's paradise. Is that what you mean? I could do that reductionist view as well. But those same matter and energy in motion is a very special kind that gets us to the moon, that plays music, that has love, that has compassion for things around us. So when you start to actually expand on what these so-called molecules in motion, I think an uncharitable reductionist view is, we in fact find out that there's a lot more to it. And these particular molecules in motion, to use that term, are very special and unique, and there's a lot more to it that they would have to acknowledge if you're intellectually honest. So yeah. I think that's not I think that's an uncharitable reductionist view of things. And like I say, I can turn the tables and do the same thing. So, but that's not going to be helpful in a discussion. And I'm not going to acknowledge that it's simply molecules in motion. To me, that's utter nonsense.
The real relevance of even discussing it as an atheist, I would say.
Yeah. So he made another comment. He said, if this isn't the thing I wanted to lead on to, and I'll try and make it quick. He said, if an authority god is able to get away with doing the worst thing ever, how can he be trusted? But he's completely neglecting what we've said here. Like, how have you established that it's the worst thing ever? Like,
because I thought it. So that's why.
Well, this is the thing. So like, you need to.
Yeah. So the one thing that Balaron is doing here, he's sort of begging the question, or he's doing the external critique of their worldview. He's taking the position that God is the worst thing ever. So then he would have to say, okay, why is it the worst thing ever? But I think if we do the internal critique, the burden is on them to demonstrate that God is in fact good, or how do they differentiate good from bad? And like we say, simply appealing to God or his nature is completely insufficient. But I think if you go this view, then you're definitely doing external critique. So if he came on the show, we'd have to say, okay, from my view, I think this is those guys. Or why do we care what you think? So they'll just dismiss that, unless you could bring up a very strong rational argument that would convince them to take your view more seriously. It's going to be very difficult for you to progress with that, I think.
Establish, like, how do you determine that the source of everything, that the most knowledgeable, the most wise? Because in order to say that, you have to presuppose the existence of the thing that you're critiquing. So you have to say that it's all wise, that it's the most just, that it's the most merciful, that like all of these things are included in that concept. So how can you then follow that on to saying that he has committed the worst thing ever and he's getting away with it? No, whatever he's done, if he's done it, there is a just reason behind it. You can't make that.
Okay, but now he's doing the exact opposite, right? He's begging the question in favor of the entity, and Balaron is begging it against it. But I don't think either of those positions, I mean, it's very difficult to argue those positions except externally. But where we can do it, that's why I think the evidential problem of evil is a significant problem, because now we have an external source that we can appeal to and say, hey, he said X, Y, and Z, and look what's actually happening as opposed to what he said. And there we can draw, potentially conflicting views. But both views at the moment are just, well, he is the best, he's the wonderful. And Balaron's going, no. Obviously, Balaron was only in the text, so he didn't have a chance to expand on what he means by that. But of course, that would be the question. Okay, how do you establish he's the worst? Or in Yusuf's case, how do you establish that he's the most just, or whatever? Presumably not just because he says so.
Unless you show us demonstratively why it's the worst thing ever. You're just making the claim. So no, it's not.
Also, a big mistake I think atheists make, especially not with when they criticize other religions, but when they criticize Muslims. So, guys, what's the first ayah or verse in almost all the surahs of the chapters?
In the name of God, the most merciful, the most gracious.
The most merciful, not the all merciful.
Yeah.
So
okay, so let's just check on this now. It stops. You tell me. To me, the most merciful and all merciful is synonymous. If I'm mistaken, I'm happy to hear that. Most means, and this was the question I put to Yusuf. I haven't seen if he's responded. Most means that there couldn't be anything to be more.
You're cutting.
One days.
No, Rob, stop. Wait.
Your view.
Rob, wait, you're cutting out. Oh shit.
I'm not seeing it at the moment.
Okay. Have you moved something?
No, I'm sitting dead still. You said stop because I'm not saying anything.
Yeah,
now.
because you were gone. When you started making your point, you were gone.
Okay, so just shout out if that happens. I mean, I'm on, because I'm downstairs. The Wi-Fi is not as good downstairs, and I'm on 4G at the moment.
Just say everything again.
Which, goodness, I don't know. I can't remember the exact words that I said. I think, it was around the most merciful, right? So, tell me your view, Stops. Most and all merciful seem to me
I
to be
follow
synonymous.
what you are saying, and I agree with you that if something is all merciful or most merciful, there is nothing that can be more merciful than this. So it's not even quibbling over words here or terms. No, it's not. If something is all merciful, then you can't get more than that, and the same is true for most merciful, because you can't get higher and more merciful than most merciful. So it's the same thing. So making a distinction here now, in my eyes, is disingenuous. It's just, grasping for, I don't know what, not even straws. I don't know what it's.
Well, I just asked for the argument, right? What's the argument to say that most and all are in this case different? And in what sense are they different? That's what I'd be asking Ben, right? What is the difference? And then, of course, we could go there. But to me, I see
that's actually a good way of doing it. Yeah.
Because they're making the claim, right? And that's the thing that we've got to remember, right?
I forget this myself. I'm the one always preaching this.
Yeah, it's so easy, isn't it, to immediately disagree with them? But actually, why are they saying that, right? If we're inquisitive as to why they're saying, because we've heard it before, but why is Ben saying that, for example? Yeah.
So it's a bit of a difference. There's a big philosophical difference
Yeah.
as well. And for you guys to criticize our concept of the creator, I recommend looking up what we believe are the attributes of the creator and understanding it, because you're bringing Christian arguments to a Muslim table or Islamic table, and that's the big problem atheists had about 10 years ago. The atheists were smashing it back then because they were debating Christians that believed in a book that they didn't know if it was reliable or not, and they believed because they wanted to believe. But then when Muslims started to step into the table, they had to go a bit and to have a little think, and now they're back, and they're now they're back, and I really recommend just looking.
That's what I said, bro. Factory reset.
No, this is a misconception.
That.
Just hang in. This is a misconception. This is what happened to me with who was it? With Imran, I think. When he was asking me something and I answered, and he says, no, you don't understand my question. I said, no, I understand your question. You don't understand my answer. And then I said, let me just reiterate your question to see if we are matching this. And this is the typical thing that we see here, that the host, this Ben guy, he doesn't understand what the point is. And he misunderstands it and thinks, well, this is like a Christian argument. No, it is not. And you cannot make this argument towards a Christian God because the attributes assigned to this God are slightly different. Not a lot, mind you, but they are different. And this is why the absolute claims that you find in Islam are totally detrimental in, to making an argument from any kind that requires logical thinking. You can't.
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, it's you've got to use different arguments, guys. We don't believe God's all merciful, because then he couldn't be anything else. All loving. With him, he's the most loving. Out of all the things that exist,
you can imagine.
Yeah, out of all the things that exist, he's the most merciful out of everything.
Being all merciful.
Oh, this guy Hamza is so cute.
Yeah, but I think I'd ask Ben, okay, so in any scenario, Ben, if we could imagine an entity being more merciful, i.e. suspending justice in that case, would you agree that he's not all merciful? And he would have to say no. In every case, God, whatever mercy whatever the highest level of mercy logically possible is, that's what God would invoke in that particular circumstance. He would have to go there. And then I'm going to ask, well, how's that different from being all merciful? I.e. in every scenario, the highest level logically possible of mercy is what he would deal out or mete out, or whatever the case is.
Exactly. Is most epic better than all epic? Who knows?
I think it's synonymous in this particular context, unless somebody can bring an argument to suggest there's a difference there.
But you see, Hamza agrees, and he doesn't even realize he agrees, because he says this is exactly this. But he he can't differentiate between the two, and he can't bring an argument why there is a difference, so he just agrees with both, not understanding that you can't do that.
Leads to being stupid in many cases, because there's certain, like, if someone comes up to you and like you say he's addicted to drugs and blah 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 blah, and he steals from you, and you're merciful to him, and you go, it's all right, go away, and that you're showing a mercy there. And he comes back, he does it again, and you're like, oh no, it's all right, go away, and he keeps coming back, and you just keep going, oh, it's all right, go away, do what you want. Like, at that point, your mercy is being taken advantage of, and it's no longer like a commendable thing.
Positive thing. It's not.
Okay, but the problem with this analogy, and this is unfortunately always the case, or almost always the case with Muslim analogies, is that analogy doesn't map onto God. Because firstly, God cannot be harmed by any human anyway, and even if people were knowingly disobedient, then a most merciful God, either he knows that they're always going to be disobedient, in which case they don't have free will, and then judging them or being merciful again is almost incoherent. But let's say that there was some way that he thought that they would come back, and actually there's a chance that they would change their ways, or whatever the case is. Then there's no limit to the number of times that God would allow you to do that, because all that's happening is they are, quote unquote, learning or being tested, or whatever term you want to use in that specific case. There's no harm that can be done to God. It's different for a human. Obviously, we're fallible, we're finite, and we have, so much patience. But so that analogy fails if you map it onto a God. And this is 99 times out of 100 what I see with Muslims. They're trying to make an analogy, and then when you try to map that onto God, it fails, as it does in this case.
It becomes a stupidity, because you're now allowing this person to just keep committing the crime, especially, and if say if you're a ruler and he's doing it to other people, and you just keep having mercy on him, and it's like other people are waiting for justice here. It's like, what are you doing? he keeps committing the crime, and you're going on as if being merciful here is some sort of, you know, like always being merciful is commendable, and it's demonstrably not the case. You know, this is why we say he's the most merciful, and he's also the most just, and he's the most wise, and there's always a balance between these things. Mercy is given where it is worthy to be given, and when people cross a line, they become what's the word? They're not worthy of receiving mercy.
Okay, well, at that point, then he's no longer most merciful. In that scenario, we could imagine a being that would allow them to go, quote unquote, further than that line or that point, in which case you've kind of refuted the argument, Yusuf.
And justice takes precedent in that case, and then justice is made. Because, again, we don't live...
Well, at least I'm glad to see that he agrees that mercy and justice cannot be invoked simultaneously. So either you're invoking mercy or you're invoking justice. You can't do both. So I'm glad he's kind of at least either unwittingly or at least certainly openly suggesting that, you know, where mercy ends, justice begins, and I'm in agreement with that. But then, you know, that counters your argument, and you don't seem to be aware of it. So either you think that they can both be invoked simultaneously, or you have to say that where one stops, the other starts. But the moment one stops, we can just ask, could a more merciful being allow that line to be pushed further? And of course, the logical answer is yes, in which case you're in big trouble.
Isolated bubbles. We live in a society. We live with each other, and you know, people often neglect this. So, but to kind of wrap up before you wanted to do the thing that I really wanted to mention was this massive jump that Tay making jumps made when, like, you were asking him, and it was like, so what is what makes something immoral? And he said it's the involuntary imposition of will. I really wanted to know where he got that from, because it just, like, he was making these claims, nature's this, you know, blah,
that's
blah,
why
blah.
I brought the rabbit and the eagle into the equation.
Yeah, and then he was like, and then just threw that one out there, and I was waiting for some sort of justification. Maybe I missed it. I've not managed to watch the whole thing, so hopefully it comes somewhere towards the end. But like, in his saying that, there was very little justification. It'd be really nice to kind of get something from that, but it was really, really weird. And there are some issues that come along with this. So, for example, like morality. Like it's supposed to be something that suggests things we ought to do and ought not to do. Now, are there consequences in his idea of morality? Is there a punishment for those who don't abide by morality? And if there isn't, what's the point on talking about these things at all? Okay.
So Yusuf, let me just point something out here. Whether there's a consequence or not is irrelevant to the principle. So he brought forth the principle, and you're right to say, well, he threw this out. But I mean, you guys throw your one out as well, which you don't justify. So be careful of throwing stones in a glass house. And yes, you could have said to him, well, why should I accept that? That's, you know, one of the main questions. Why should I accept that the involuntary imposition of will is what you call moral? Now he would have to make an argument, and all he's going to, as far as I've heard, and I could be wrong, so I don't want to misrepresent, he will just assert that it's a natural law. Well, obviously, that's not going to be appealing even to me as an atheist, but certainly not going to be appealing to a theist, and maybe he's doing it to show them, well, hey, I can do the same under naturalism as you. You guys just appeal to God as if he is somehow just by fiat a priori good, and I'm just going to appeal to a natural law and say, hey, that's my a priori objective standard. So maybe he's doing it in that way. But, you know, at very best, he's just doing the opposite of what you guys are doing, and you don't seem to realize it.
And if there is a punishment, that's an imposition of will.
Exactly.
If someone commits a crime, so if someone murders someone, or if someone commits...
Okay, but you didn't understand it, right? So, yes, there would be an imposition of will in that scenario, but what he's comparing it with is like a perfect world, or well, not a perfect world, but the best possible world is the word he uses, where there is zero imposition of will, where nobody imposes on anybody else's will. Everybody's free to do whatever they want as long as they don't impose on somebody else's will. That's his perfect world. Any world that's less than that, there would presumably be some sort of punishment or whatever the case is, which yes would also violate that, but to the least degree possible, and over time presumably that would reduce. That would be probably like a way that Tom might argue that over time it would become less and less imposition on will, and to a point where, you know, the ultimate standard would be no imposition of will by anybody, and and everybody agrees to the standard. They recognize that that's the best possible world.
Genocide, you know, a mass murderer will go for like one of these crazy people that you find in America, and he kills a number of people. Whether you put him in prison, whether you lash him, whether you put him to death, all three of these are an imposition of will. He doesn't necessarily want that punishment. But is it just to not punish him, to let people do that and get away with it? No. So his own framework saying something is immoral if it is an involuntary imposition of will implies that any sort of consequence, any punishment is itself immoral. So, like, what do? You just go, hey, you guys, stop killing all those people. It's not nice. Like, so.
I think I've explained it, and I don't remember that Tom was actually pressed on that point anyway. But it would be interesting one to hear from Tom. What do you do? And presumably he'd say what I would say. Yes, there is some sort of punishment or sanction for imposition of will, but with the idea that over time that would reduce. I mean, maybe he's got some other point there, and people who have heard him more in depth might know, but I don't remember him actually touching on that point. So at this point, I think they're speculating about this, and they don't actually know.
Oh, what's it? Like, how is it that you're going to motivate people to abide by this morality?
And then you're going to abolish war. There'll be no wars anymore, and it just becomes a minefield.
Well, that's the thing. It gives power to the It gives power to the immoral. So
yes,
let's say we agree, right? Yeah. What is immoral is that which is an involuntary imposition of will. Let's say a very immoral nation grows that says, I don't care, I'm going to impose my will on everyone else. How do you combat that?
Yeah, but Yusuf, that's why you're misunderstanding, right? Because he's compared with again, I'm saying the same thing. He's comparing it with the best possible world where there is no imposition of will. And the idea is to move from the world that we're at to that world. And in that world, and if that were the case, then you'd have to ask him, well, what would you do in that case? But he wasn't asked that question. So you're asking it now and, talking about it, which is fine, but he wasn't asked that question. And again, that's irrelevant to the original principle, which is the imposition of will. What happens underneath that you can question, but really, if you want to challenge it, challenge the imposition of will itself. I suppose maybe this is one of his ways of challenging that, but Tom wasn't asked about this anyway.
Yeah, but the thing is, they're speculating because they never asked him.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, he wasn't asked about this, and that would have been more of an interesting critique against his position anyway. But again, I think we have to repeat: if you don't understand it as Hamza doesn't, and I don't think Imran did either, or anybody on that stream, in fact, then obviously your attempt to critique it is going to be off the mark. So you've got to understand it. Then you can hone in on it and critique it, more substantially, potentially.
What do you do? Nazi Germany start popping up, start running around causing havoc. How do you stop them in a moral way? You can't. So what happens? They conquer, and it's just the will to power now. Like, what is right and wrong is just whatever they've set it, because it becomes law. But
it becomes even more absurd than that, because you couldn't send your child up to bed.
Is immoral.
Because what you're doing is you're imposing your on them involuntarily for them. If you said to your child, okay, 7 o'clock, have your bedtime. It's bedtime.
Making them eat the greens.
No, Dad, you're being
Imposing your will upon me.
I only want to eat ice cream and chocolate from now on, Mummy and Daddy. The moral thing there is just to let them eat ice cream and chocolate and never have any sort of other news.
Sounds like the world.
Yeah.
Have we got anything?
He said in an ideal world, eagles wouldn't eat rabbits.
Yeah, they'd be friends, wouldn't they? They'd be friends, eagles and rabbits. They'd be buddies.
Okay, but I mean, you're all laughing about it as if that's absurd. There's
Exactly.
nothing logically absurd about it.
This is terrible.
It's a what's called a possible world or a hypothetical, and there's nothing logically absurd with it. It's just that you guys don't understand hypotheticals or possible worlds, and so you just laugh it off because, hey, that's not even possible. Well, all we're talking about is whether it's logically possible. And if it's logically possible, then you don't have a critique to say to go, well, hey, I don't think it's possible. That's obviously rather silly.
That was the other thing.
Christian in the rapture.
That was the other thing.
So Abbas, the link hasn't been given out yet.
Let's give it out because it might take a bit of time to get them on.
So
Yeah, we've been talking for an hour. Should we just, before we carry on chatting, Abbas, sorry, and Anis, could you pop the link up, please?
Put the link out there and store them up ready.
just a last kind of finishing comment on that. So his idea that you would have to kind of stop, or the idea that like a animal or a carnivore eating another animal is immoral, sort of necessitates this idea of moving the human being towards the status of God, that is to have complete control over nature in order to make things moral. And so this idea that like a lion eating another animal out of necessity because it's a
Yeah, I think that's a good comment, right? Those are questions, fair questions, which should be addressed by him, not to be strawman as you think he says, to while it totally presenting as misunderstanding of the theory. Yeah, so I think because I think this Adam guy is one of the guys that sort of is on Tom's server a lot. And I think that's a valid critique right there. They need to be addressed by Tom directly, which, as I think other people pointed out, he didn't get a lot of chance to explain things. And when you have 3, 4 or 5 Muslims, as we'll see, there'll be a lot of interruptions. There's not a lot of time to get your point out. So you've got to be really either talk very fast, or you've got to like have it in a nutshell, like a script-based format that you can just fire it out in 30 seconds or less, probably 15 seconds. And that's not always easy when you've got to explain a complex topic.
Carnivore, like it doesn't eat corn and other things. In order to make the world a moral place, because he was comparing it to the ideal, where there would be no imposition of will, you would have to somehow like give a substitute meal to every lion, and to like not just that, it would kind of go through the whole hierarchy of animals. So there's all these weird little bugs that eat things against their will, and like you would have to like there's a fungus that infects the brain of certain insects. It turns them into zombies, and so you would have to sort of figure out a way to prevent that immoral act in order to reach this.
The Emerald Wasp.
Sorry, guys. I just want to double check for people in the audience. It is just atheists we're asking on the stream, isn't it?
Right, just so you know, I think this Hatem al-Sharidi, he messaged me saying that he's dealt with T-Jump and he knows a lot of this philosophical stuff. So he's not an atheist, but he could be useful as well.
I've got someone that's good. That would be good to come on.
Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, let's bring Rob on, inshallah.
Yeah,
Hey, Rob, you all right?
Okay, so I'm coming on now. Just so you know the context, I was sitting out in my car and I was pretty cold, freezing. So if I sound more passionate, let's say, than usual, it's because I was chilly. I was like, almost like trying to move my body to get going. So you'll hear me sound as if I'm frustrated or whatever the case is. It was more that I was quite chilly. And so I was moving a lot, and that kind of became representative in my voice. Stops as well. If you think I've said something that maybe, or there's something I missed, or I could have said something better, please do shout out if anybody else does, because the way I can improve is to see where I've missed things. I'm in no way perfect, and I like to hear, and I'll listen back and see if I pick up things that I could have done better as well. So I invite any critique of something I've said or what I could do better, or if I was wrong, and I can learn from that. So here we go.
Mate.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you guys?
Yeah, good, man. Good, man.
6
Nice
on
to have
1,
you
eh? You're outnumbered, but it's
No, I'm just a host. That's 5 on 1, but don't worry about it.
no problem. No
I'm
problem.
just going to say smirky comments here and there.
That's okay. You go ahead. I don't choose to take offence. Offence isn't given; it's taken. So you have control over it.
It's a shame we didn't actually talk about that, but that, I guess, would have been off the point, right? But hey.
Whether you're offended or not, and I choose not to be, so it's not a problem.
I'd love to test that in real life.
Go for it, buddy. Anytime you want.
What is it? I mean, go ahead.
What did he say? I didn't understand.
He said, I'd love to test that in real life, because I said offence is taken, not given. In other words, you can say things to me, and the only time that offence enters the world, for want of a better word, is if I choose to. Even if you attempted to, in my view, or intended to offend me, if I don't take it as offence, well then the term offence, in my view, is pretty meaningless.
Yeah, but I hear Jordan now. This is the second time I hear him say, "Okay, I'd like to hear this in real life. Let's go and talk about this," and then he runs away.
I mean, he was on a stream on Sunday, and I was texting there to him backwards and forwards. But I don't think that we'll get a chance to have a conversation one-on-one with him. I think that probably won't happen. So at best, he'll be part of a panel, and that'll be the only way that we'll ever get to talk about it. But I don't think he says much here, as far as I remember.
Next time I see you.
Anytime. Yeah, so we did a stream on it. Obviously, I heard the thing last night. It was a bit late for me to come on, so my colleague Stop Spamming came on, and T-Jump came on, obviously. And we did a review critique of the first 52 minutes, which was your guys' intro, so we haven't got to the actual with the other things. But we certainly found a lot of problems with that. So maybe I can respond to your 3 main questions, if you like, and then you can go from there. How's that?
I made a mistake here. I should not have gone for the 3 main things. I should have just ignored the belief thing that Hamza came up with, gone straight to the evolution thing, and then gone straight to the morality. Or even better, looking back on it now as I review, I should have carried on with the morality thing, because that's where they were. With T-Jump, I wouldn't have defended his point. I would try to explain it to them, but I never got to do this in this entire thing. And looking back, I should have changed the way I did this.
Do each one at a time if you like. You can start with belief.
Yep. Go ahead. What's your assertion about that?
You said you come to respond to it.
Yeah, so your view is that, hey, when an atheist says you have a belief, other people also have a belief, and a belief needs to be justified, but a belief can also be true without evidence, correct?
Okay, we've done stance. You know that if you I know you didn't watch the stream live. You watched it back because you basically cut it up and put it on your channel. So you've
Correct.
seen the stream. So you know exactly what I said. So because you've actually put that segment on your channel. So can you
Correct.
respond to what I said?
Yep. Okay. So when you say that a belief doesn't need to have evidence, that's true in the sense that you could randomly have a belief that is true, but that wouldn't be a belief that you could justify because you wouldn't have good reasons. So, and if somebody pointed that out to you, then you would obviously, you would hope you would revise your belief. So if I said, hey, I believe, I don't know, in fairies, and somebody said to me, Rob, why do you believe in fairies? And I go, you know what, I don't know. At that point, because I don't have any good reasons, it could be that fairies exist. But at that point, I think,
Rob, can
I haven't got any good reasons.
pause
Maybe I
a
should
second?
hold that belief. Maybe I should.
Sure.
You are talking past each other. Hamza doesn't understand what you're saying. He is very proud of himself that he has finally understood that he can have a belief without having to rely on evidence. He's talking for himself. He's talking about himself being able to have a belief which is just being convinced of something without being dependent on evidence. This is what he's talking about. What you are talking about is, well, if you have a belief and you want to display this belief to somebody else, well, then you need to provide evidence for your belief. Otherwise, the claim that you are making by stating the belief is totally unjustified. But he does not understand the distinction. He is talking about him internally not having to, must have evidence for, for forming a belief.
Yeah, that could well be true, actually. And as a couple of philosophers have pointed out, once you recognize that you have a belief about something, and certainly at least a few of them that I've listened to, they're of the view that you need warrant for yourself. Warrant is like a version of justification, but perhaps not quite so strong. You need to have some reason, why you have the belief. How did you form that belief? Because you don't choose your beliefs, right? You are either convinced for good or bad reasons. So somehow you have become convinced of something, or you've taken the belief, and sometimes you're not even consciously aware of the reason that you've done it. But it's not like I can choose to believe that Santa Claus exists. That's absurd, right? I would need to be convinced of it. And if I said I did, and I had no good reasons, and actually if I looked at it, I would probably go, no, I didn't. And especially if a God is all-knowing, you can't choose to believe it. So the whole thing with Paley's, not Paley's watchmaker, what's the other one? Pascal's wager, is totally ridiculous because you can't choose a belief. But you're right. I mean, he was coming from a slightly different position to me. And like I say, I shouldn't have gone down this route anyway. It was trivial stuff, and it wasted a bit of time in the beginning here. So my mistake really there.
So
To become
what
undecided,
I have
or maybe I
learned
should just.
is the difference between type 1 and type 2 thinking. And type 1 thinking is purely based on intuition, on estimate, on gut instinct, on feelings and things like that. And that is what we normally first turn to. So the way that you initially might form a belief is actually just by instinct, without having any further evidence. It's only when you think about it later that you will then find good reasons why or why not you should have that belief. But at the moment you go and you try and convince somebody else of it, it's different.
Yeah.
Dismiss that belief until I've got good reasons to believe it.
Yeah. So just in a nutshell, so you don't paraphrase me, and so you can respond to exactly what I said. Okay. So this is in response to atheists that make the claim, either prove your God, or God doesn't exist. Yeah. So some will say prove God exists, and you can't say atheists don't do that because they do.
What
And I know
do they mean by prove? So what do they mean when they say prove?
demonstrate it, bring evidence that God exists. Prove
Correct.
it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, like Stop Spamming was trying to say that atheists don't do this, atheists do this, yeah? And also the other thing that atheists do is they make the assertion that God doesn't exist. So not all atheists. Some atheists are happy to say, well, you know what, I don't believe God exists. If you do, good luck to you. But when an atheist says God doesn't exist, they obviously, that's a claim. Obviously, they can't support that claim with any evidence because you can't falsify that. So,
Well, that's not necessarily true, right? It depends on the God claim. And this was the sort of point I had with you.
I'm not talking about God at this point. I'm not talking about anything at this point. There's no specifics to what I'm saying. It's a principle.
Yeah, but you're saying you can't falsify it. You can't
No, what I'm saying
falsify
to you, you can't prove to me something doesn't exist.
Well, it depends what it is. If it's self-contradictory, then I could prove it. So if there was a God, if there was a claim, whatever the claim is, let's say it's a God claim, a particular God claim, and the God is, say, the person makes the claim that the God is good and the God is bad. That is a contradiction. Agreed?
Okay,
And if
let me say
somebody
this.
came up with that
Prove to me, Rob. Prove to me Ganesh doesn't exist.
What is Ganesh?
No,
Indian elephant god.
he doesn't understand it. You see, with Hamza, you can't do like conceptual or anything theoretical. You can't do that. You can only make solid points and say, here's a pencil, the pencil is real, these are the things he understands. As soon as you start going into theoretical things, he doesn't understand. He will say, no, that you can never prove anything that something does not exist. Of course you can. And he's incapable. Now, not only because he's a Muslim, but I think as a person, he is not gifted with grey matter to be able to conceptualize something or to work in theoretical concepts. I don't think he can do that. For him, it needs to be like tangible, and then you go from one and one, and that's what he can follow, but nothing else.
Yeah, and he keeps using the word prove, which he himself said was demonstrate, show, give reasons for, whatever the case, right? When I hear the word proof, again, maybe because I've done a lot of this, I take it to mean something much stronger than that. Proof would be like a mathematical proof or a logical deduction. That would be a proof for me. And now if a layperson says prove or proof, and that's what a lot of people do, then what they really mean, and he agreed, is demonstrate or give reasons for this, right? And that one can do. Now, the other person might not accept it, but you could give some reasons. And that's why I'm asking the question now. You'll hear, I think, if I remember correctly, about this Ganesh, because that term on its own doesn't tell me anything. I need information about this. I'm going to ask some questions about a particular God before I can claim to disprove it, right?
And what are the attributes and so forth of that God?
I don't know.
Okay, well, you see, you've got to give that information. Otherwise, how can you disprove it? So if somebody makes, the only thing that is difficult to disprove is a deist God, because there's no claims about that other than this God exists and it created the universe. As soon as you get to a theist God, there's specific claims, right?
All right, okay. Prove to me Allah doesn't exist.
Yeah, okay, I should have, we'll go through it here anyway. I mean, I go into the Quran and stuff like that now, but maybe there was a better way to handle this. What would you have done there?
I would have made it very clear that we're talking about two different things. Number one, we're talking about the concept of a God, and we're talking about a very specific God. Now, it's very easy to show that the Allah, this one very specific God, cannot exist just by using logical thinking. But in general, it's a very different thing. So you need to differentiate. He always says we're not talking about religion, we're not talking about a God, we're not talking about this, but you need to be sure what it is that you are talking about, and he is dancing around all the time. If you're talking about gods in general, he says, well, what about Allah? When you're talking about Allah, he says, no, we're not talking about Allah, we're talking about all gods in general. So, you need to pin him down, and you need to say, okay, what is it that you are asking me about which God? And then you can reply. And this is crazy.
I should have just, at this point, I should have just gone with the most merciful and most just thing and shown that leads to a contradiction. Then I could have gone down that route. And that's actually probably would have taken us into morality. So that would have been a way to do it. I can't actually remember what I said now, so we'll just see what I actually said, yeah.
Okay, sure. The fact that your Quran, you believe comes from Allah. I believe that the Quran does not come from Allah, and therefore Allah does not exist. It's a man-made book, and if the claim, it is, well, let me finish it. And if
the claim.
If the book is man-made, and the claim is that Allah created the book, and that if the book does not exist, then Allah does not exist.
Why?
Because Allah created the book, and you would know nothing about Allah if the book is false. If a human made it up, then Allah does not exist.
No, Allah could still exist even if
how would you know that Allah exists?
Man-made.
No, it's not about.
It's not about whether we know. It's about whether or not it's possible.
Okay. So, this was all right, actually. That where I went here was okay, because what they're going to say here is that, hey, even if you prove that the book did not come from Allah, that means Allah does not exist. Now the burden is on them. But how else could Allah exist? And if you just say that Allah is logically possible, then it depends on the attributes. But then you open yourself up to the same claim that everybody else, right? If you disprove the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita or whatever the Hindu scripture is, whatever it is, you still can't prove that those gods don't exist. So if you're going to go down this ultra skeptical route, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. Because my claim is simply, at this point, that if it's shown, and this is what Muslims have told me, by the way, if it's shown that the book does not come from Allah, then they wouldn't believe Allah exists. And I agree that there's a difference between not believing Allah exists and Allah not existing in ontology. But that's the claim that, so if Allah didn't write the book, then it follows that he doesn't exist. And if you're going to say, well, no, he could still exist, well, you could say that about any God claim. And that would be absurd, because then you can never disprove, quote unquote, any God claim.
So he could still exist, showing, even if you were to show that the Quran was man-made, that wouldn't necessitate the non-existence of
Rob,
God.
could there exist
Non-existence of
something?
God, right?
You see what happens now, of course, now they all come in. So it's very difficult to follow us. I should have just stayed with Yusuf, and you'll see me later on try to stick with one person, but, that's very hard with this number of people on the panel.
Could there exist?
You said that Allah
We're
wouldn't
going to have a
exist.
shotgun here. Who am I going to speak
Can I
to? I
ask you a
can't speak to
question?
5 different people.
Sorry, just on this point. Can something exist that you're not aware of?
Of course.
Okay, so then that's not a case that you're making.
Okay, so he didn't understand there's a difference in ontology and epistemology, but I'm making the case that if the book doesn't exist, then there's no good reason to believe it. Maybe I should have said the word belief here, right? Then there's no good reason to believe it. But like I say, even if Allah existed in ontology and the book was not from Allah, you would have no way to demonstrate that. But then the same would be true of any other God claim that's claimed from a book. So it's self-defeating to you to go to this ultra-skeptical position of, hey, well, even if you prove my book wrong, that doesn't mean that God doesn't exist in reality.
Well, not in this case anyway, because of the claims in the book.
Yeah, but they're saying that even if it was entirely man-made, Allah could still exist. And while that's ontologically possible, I don't believe that that's a rational position to hold, because then it would, like I say, that would be the same for any other God. And now you would have an absurd claim that even if you disproved all other religions from which the God claims sprung, which is their books, those gods could still exist. Well, sure, that's entirely logically possible, but it depends. That's why I say that depends what you mean by proof, right? He asked proof, and I asked in the beginning, what do you mean by proof? It's always good to ask people, what do you mean by X and Y, especially if it's going to, later on prove quite crucial here. All I'm demonstrating is that if the book doesn't exist, then God likely does not exist. I think that's probably the best way to put it. But they're taking it of a position that it's impossible for God to exist, and I'm not suggesting it's impossible. So again, we've got to be very clear here, because they'll jump between what seems like absolute claims and probability claims, and they'll do so, very easily, and people won't be noticing the difference.
Well, when you say prove, I'm giving reasons why I think that if the Quran is not true, Allah doesn't
There
exist.
you go. That's not proof, right? I asked him in the beginning what constitutes proof. You've got to ask these questions, otherwise they can do exactly what Hamza is. That's not proof.
Well, okay, so what do you consider proof?
You can't provide proof.
What do you consider proof?
It's impossible to.
There you go. As soon as I pin him down, what do you consider proof? He says it's impossible.
provide proof.
What do you consider proof? If you ask me for proof and you can't tell me what proof is, then you're just going to deny anything I say.
A reasoned argument that has that's sound and valid.
There you go. So Yusuf understands it, right? There's a reasoned argument that's sound and valid. Then that would be acceptable. And I don't see that it's unreasonable or not a reasoned argument to suggest that if the Quran does not exist, or if it can be demonstrated the Quran doesn't exist, then Allah likely doesn't exist, because Allah is tied to the Quran. I don't see a problem with that. Maybe I'm missing something, Stops. Is there something that you want to...
No, I agree, 100%, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Let's move on. If you can't tell me what the criteria is for proof, then
Just,
whatever I say,
Rob, can I just come in there, Rob?
Yeah, go for it.
Rob, the important thing is, what do you consider as proof for the existence of?
Complete red herring now. Here we go off on a tangent. And that's why it's difficult with a panel, right? Because everybody's got their own ideas that are coming up in their head. And I see this a lot, and I even see it when we as atheists together are like, I'm going down a line of questioning, and some other atheist that might be with me jumps in and they'll ask a question that kind of goes off on a tangent like this. And it might be the same for you, Stops. You'll be going down in your mind a line of questioning. Maybe I ask a question, or if there's more of us and we ask a question of a Muslim, and that sort of takes you off in a different tangent. And this is clearly like a completely different point that
I remember
Hamza's
Hijab
bringing.
trying to do that with me, and I didn't. And he got very frustrated when I said, no, I am not going there. I'm sticking to the original, and that's it. And he was very frustrated that he couldn't take me off.
Yeah, and maybe I should have done the same here. I don't remember if I did or not. We'll see now.
God, and how would you be convinced? And the reason why I'm asking you that, Rob, is that pretty much every atheist that I've spoken to has a different criteria as to what they need to satisfy the claim of God existing. Now, I've even asked atheists, if a hand came down from the clouds and pointed at you and said, I want you to worship me, I am God, would you accept it? The person thought for a while, his gaze sort of went to the left or the right, and he said, probably not. So the reality here, Rob, is it's you who needs to tell us what you would accept, because every atheist seems to have a different criteria as to what the evidence would be that they would require for evidence of God. Now, what I would suggest to you, Rob, is that if there are a reasonable number of possibilities as to how this universe came into existence, you can either prove God by proving God directly, i.e. visible, observable
I can't
evidence,
read that.
or the other way.
Evidence or argument establishing a fact or the truth of a statement. That's obviously, it's a dictionary definition, right? That isn't a philosophical. That's the dictionary rather than a philosophical definition. But I think, that's why I asked Hamza what is proof in the beginning. He gave me some words, and then I asked him what would you accept as proof, because he said prove God does not exist or prove Allah doesn't exist. And when I gave some things, and I should have asked it there again before I started, what do you accept as proof? And when I did ask him that and pressed him on it, and he thought about it for a moment, he said, "There's nothing." Well, okay, then there's nothing that I can say, right?
Would be to look at the arguments against the creator of God, i.e., how the universe could have come into existence in any other way, and if those ways are false or not provable or are highly doubtable, then the only thing you are left with rationally, logically, is some entity that is eternal and that had to have, as a necessity, brought the existence of this universe into being. That's a deductive argument. And it's a sound way of finding truth. Now, we're not claiming, Rob, as theists, that we have analytical or empirical evidence to prove the existence of God. We're saying we have good reasons to believe that God exists.
Well, that's what I'm looking for. Your good reasons for why God exists. And if you're saying there's none of them that are empirical, well, then what have you got? Conceptual, abstract, or philosophical ideas? I mean, your book makes specific claims about reality. To me, those are empirical claims. If you want to deny that, okay, I don't think you're going to be on firm ground doing that. Did God interact in this world in some empirical way?
Can we just stay on the previous point just one second?
That's irrelevant, Rob. Talk about
empirical evidence. And I'm saying you should have empirical evidence. Rob, if you told me you've got a dog in the kitchen with you right now, could I prove you haven't got a dog with you?
You probably could find a way to do it. You could say switch your camera on. You could find some way to do it, right?
No, but could I prove you haven't got a dog?
In the kitchen, yeah. Or you could ask my neighbour. There's ways to demonstrate.
No, now I'm saying.
Yes, you can.
And say you had a blue dragon. Say you've got a blue.
Sorry?
Yes, the answer is yes. Why can't you just listen? Yes, the answer is yes. Rob said yes. Okay, carry on.
Dragon in the back garden. Could I prove you haven't?
Well, if it was invisible, probably not.
Right, so how would I prove it didn't exist then?
Well, you go, hey, well, it depends what you mean by proof, right? I couldn't see it on my phone.
Well, how can I make the claim it doesn't exist? How can I make the claim it doesn't exist?
Yeah, because
how can I support that claim?
Yeah, so because it's an extraordinary claim, and we have no evidence of invisible dragons existing, therefore it's likely that an invisible dragon does not exist.
No, but that then...
You see, he talks over me, and so if I'd finished it, which you probably heard me saying in the background, it's likely that, philosophically speaking, I'm saying it's likely that dragons don't exist. I think we could say as lay people that we believe or dragons don't exist, and that would be a lay person's way of saying, there's no dragons. But if you went philosophical, then I'd have to say, well, there's a probability of that, because I can't demonstrate that it's impossible. But the probability is near zero, right? And I think any thinking person would agree. And that's what the point is.
I would prefer here, if you were to say, okay, the analogy is there's no God because you haven't, met the standards and the onus. So you have not been able to provide any evidence that there is a God, so there's no good reason to believe that there is. You should say, when he says, well, how do I know that a God does not exist? Well, it's very easy. I have not provided you the evidence that it does.
Yeah, then again, and of course, what do you accept as evidence? And we go down that, which
I
is
have
not a
not
problem.
provided you any kind of evidence. This is the whole point. You have to tell me what evidence you want, and then we're on the same base again. And you cannot ask me you cannot tell me what kind of evidence you want because you don't know about the attributes of a dragon. So I, who is the owner, who is the claimer of that dragons exist, have to be able to provide you with the evidence that is credible. And if you can't, if I am unable to do that, you are well in your right to deny this and say, no, there are no dragons. It's that easy. We can turn it around and we can use dragons. It's a beautiful analogy, and you can twist it any way you want it. It's going to be the same outcome as with gods. This is why I love it so much.
Demonstrate invisible dragons don't exist.
That will show that it's likely that invisible dragons do not exist. Yeah. Do you accept that as evidence?
No, I don't think I could disprove haven't got one. I don't think I would say you haven't got one.
Yeah, but Hamza, it depends what you mean by proof.
Yeah.
Well, I just said.
Pity.
Well, if you accept
Make
what I
the
just
claim,
said, then
just
that
make
would
the
be
claim you haven't got
inverted
one.
commas proof.
Huh?
If you accept what I just said, then inverted commas, that's proof. If you make an extraordinary claim, if I make an extraordinary claim that I have an invisible dragon in my backyard, and you say, hang on, Rob, What reasons have you got for believing it? Now I say
No.
something like-
You're using my argument now. I think that's what reasons you got to believe you got a dragon. I just said I wouldn't say you haven't got one because I couldn't prove you haven't got one.
Yeah, he's missing the point here. You can say, when you say, and again, there's a confusion here, I think, in his mind that it's like absolute, like it's impossible for a dragon to exist. Nobody's saying that. And you see, and that's why it's better if I speak to somebody who's like more literate on the topic, because I'm pretty sure that's what he's thinking here, that he can't absolutely prove it doesn't exist. Well, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that it's likely, there's a high probability that it does not exist if we're going to talk philosophical language. That's all we're saying, right? And that's entirely, I think, and that's why, as you say, the dragon analogy is useful in the analogy with God, at least from our perspective. They will deny that, of course, but the bigger point is that it's an extraordinary claim as opposed to a mundane claim, and that's the difference. You could more likely accept a mundane claim about the dog, even though you haven't seen it, as opposed to a dragon. Why? Because there's certain attributes there that violate everything that we understand about reality, and so it's far less likely that a dragon will exist than I've got a dog in my kitchen, and that's the point.
Why wouldn't you say that?
Explain
That seems to me
Guys.
why would you not say I haven't got a dragon?
I'm just demonstrating you can't prove something doesn't exist.
I think there's a bit of miscommunication between Rob and the rest. I think Rob is saying that good reasons is proof, which Hamza doesn't think that's proof. It's just good reasons. Am I right?
I need to go quickly. I'll be back just now.
Okay, mate, no worries. You just shout when you're back.
The whole point of what was going back to the original point. Belief is the acceptance of something to be true. You agree with that, Rob, isn't it?
Yeah, acceptance of a proposition as true or likely true. Yeah.
Right. That's what belief is. And so what happens, you see, is when you say that, when I say I can't prove God exists, I believe God exists. And then that means I accept the proposition of God existing, and I give my reasons for why that is. That's how, and the only way you can counter then my reasons for my belief is by countering my reasons. You agree with that, don't you?
Sure, but that's a trivial point. That's the same.
No. It's not a trivial point. I'll tell you why. Because when you come to this point, the atheist pulls out Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy, all the other religions, 3,000 religions in the world, so because they haven't got proof and they believe then they're true as well.
Okay, but now I'm going to ask him, I hope if I remember correctly here, why do they do that? Because I think he misunderstands why atheists do it, but let's just check if that's the case.
So you agree with me then that it all has to be reasoned, isn't it?
Well, any claim will have some reasons behind it. Otherwise, you shouldn't be holding the
Right.
claim, right?
So you agree then that Ricky Gervais's nonsensical 3,000 God argument is in fact nonsensical if you're using the principle of belief and reasoned belief.
But what do you mean?
The idea that Ricky Gervais says there's 3,000 gods, you reject them all for just one God, and I reject that God as well, so I just believe in one less God than you. The idea that because you believe something, that means everything's on the table then. But that's not true, is it?
Because you believe something, everything's on the table.
No. If you believe something to be true, it doesn't mean that everything else other people believe to be true are true also, does it?
No, but they would have the same reasons, right?
No,
They
would have the same reason. No.
Well,
They wouldn't have the
their
same
reasons.
reason.
Yeah, but
They wouldn't have the same reason. No. They
What's
wouldn't
wrong with
have.
Ricky Gervais saying that? That's what I want to know.
Oh, okay. They wouldn't have the same reasons. They would have.
Well, what I mean by the same reasons, they will have reasons that are similar, I guess is the way to put it there. Not the same as in like they're going to say the same thing as you, but they're going to potentially, if they've thought about it, they're going to have reasons as well. That's what I mean there. So everybody that has thought about a particular thing and puts a belief out there, that I believe X and has thought about it, will have a reason for it, hopefully.
Their own reasons.
Correct. Yeah, they'd have their own reasons.
Right. And then what you can do is reason through them. So just because I accept the existence of Allah doesn't mean I have to accept the existence of Zeus and the existence of Ganesh and Vishnu.
Okay, but Hamza, have you investigated the reasons?
So what I'm saying to you is that I have actually. I did go to all the religions.
All 3,000. Oh, okay.
No.
3,000.
No.
Yeah,
I narrowed it down to monotheistic for my belief in what creators should be by necessity. I didn't believe in, for example, when you read the story of Ganesh, the elephant god, how he lost his head and they couldn't find it, and as soon as you say God couldn't do something for me, that isn't God, and you've lost my.
That's your arbitrary definition of God.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I did make the point there. That's your arbitrary definition of God. So if you have a particular definition, go, hey, this is what I mean by God, and that's all you're going to accept. Well, of course, then you can reject anything else. But if it were the Hindu who says, well, I reject a single God, there must be multiple gods, and they might have the reasons for that, then of course they're going to deny yours a priori, because they have the assumption of they've taken what to somebody else might appear to be an arbitrary set of criteria for their God. Now, if you could logically argue that it's necessary or impossible for multiple gods to exist, or that it must be one God or it must be multiple, that would be different. But at the moment, you're just taking this criteria and saying, well, I reject everything else. And I guess what I could have asked him here at this point is, well, Why did you take that criteria and not the other ones? Why is that? At the time you were supposedly an atheist, why did you take those criteria? Why must it be one God, or whatever the case is? Why is it that the head can't fall off and then be found and put back on, or whatever that story is that's involved there?
Exactly, because the point is that all he's doing, basically, he's formed his own opinion and then looked at the Quran and found some sort of a confirmation, and he says, that's what I'm looking for.
Well, I think also, if I understand his story correctly, that he looked at Christianity and for him the Trinity didn't make sense, which on that point I obviously agree with. But just because the Trinity might not make sense in the way some Christians explain it, doesn't mean that there can't be multiple gods. I agree that the way the Christians try to explain it, that's problematic. But if there was a council of gods, or if did you watch the movie Green Lantern, the not so good one, unfortunately, with Ryan Reynolds? Right, you've got this council of beings. I can't remember what they call them, but they're like, bit like those ones, that invasion from Mars one with Jack Nicholson. You've got these beings with these coats, and they're all sitting around, and they make like a collective decision, and there doesn't appear to be any argument among the beings. Now you can imagine a set of gods like that, where each god does a particular thing, and there's no argument around it. I want to know what the logical contradiction is in that being the case. Or somebody could say as well, I define God as a single God. Okay, but that's not going to be convincing. You'd have to tell me why a one God is necessary, and the attributes that you're applying to it, why those are necessarily the case. Why can't they be shared or used in a perfect, council of gods, for want of a better word?
Yes, that's mine.
Okay, well,
yes.
that's fine. That's your opinion.
Right. So what I'm saying to you is this. No, but the point I'm making is this. So when I say I believe something to be true, doesn't automatically make all the other 3,000 beliefs true, does it?
No, of course it doesn't make them true.
Right. So it's nonsensical then for an atheist to make that claim. When as soon as I mention that I believe something to be true, then it automatically makes everyone's belief true. That's nonsensical, isn't it?
No, but that's not what the atheist is saying. I don't make that claim anyway.
No, I'm not saying you. Look, remember one thing, Rob. I'm addressing what's come at me. And I guarantee you, if you look in the comments, as soon as I mention belief, Tooth Fairy will come out the pocket. 100%. Without even thinking. I had some guy say...
Okay, but hopefully I'm going to ask him now, why does he think atheists do that? Okay? And now I'm going to ask him to think. Hopefully it's at this point, and watch his reaction. I'm pretty sure it happens now, but I could be mistaken. Let's see.
To me, prove there's no invisible pink monkey on Mars.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And then he obviously didn't believe in pink invisible monkeys. I didn't believe in
but that's
invisible
irrelevant.
monkeys. No, but Allahu Akbar.
That's one
the
of the
point.
critiques. No, hang on, listen. Hang on a moment. Listen, that's one of the critiques I had against you. It's irrelevant whether he believes it. That's complete red herring. What he's doing, let me explain to you. What he's doing is bringing up another belief and saying, hey, you can't disprove that.
No, but he can't.
You're saying to him, hang on, this is the reason why an atheist does it. I don't think it's the best argument, but this is the reason an atheist does it. Because you guys are saying,
let's do it.
Let me finish. Otherwise, you're not going to know why the atheist does it. You can critique it if you like. But the reason why atheists do it is because you're saying, hey, atheist, you can't disprove my God, Allah. And so the atheist comes back and says, hey, Hamza, you can't disprove the pink cat on Mars. They don't have to believe it. All they're doing is a reductio ad absurdum against your position. You know what that means?
Is it doing what against my position?
They're doing a reductio ad absurdum against your position. Now, you can critique it. All that means is they're giving you a counter-example to show why they think your position is absurd.
Right. But my position is not that, is it?
Just as much as they can't disprove your.
No, but Rob,
that's
that's misrepresenting my position, isn't it?
No, it's not.
It is.
He doesn't understand what a reductio is. And maybe I could have taken more time, but I'm limited to how much, because he's constantly interrupting, so I'm trying to speak quite quickly. And probably Yusuf knows what it is anyway. But I'm trying to explain why it's not absurd, and I don't think he understands why an atheist brings that up. Just to show that, here's something else that you can't disprove. So when you ask an atheist to disprove something, they can turn around and say, well, okay, I can't disprove it, depending on what you mean by proof, but you can't disprove X or Y, right? So that's why an atheist does this, but I don't think he understands this.
Yeah,
no, it's not false. Because my position is not God exists. You're...
Oh, that's new.
Well, hang on a moment, listen to what I say now, I think.
You're responding to my God exists.
Your position is not that God exists.
No, that's not my position.
What is your position?
My position, I believe God exists.
Okay, that's your epistemic position. Do you think there's an ontological view of
Okay, now, these two words, okay, they're not difficult words, and anybody that's had a cursor, and I'm not a philosophical expert by any stretch, I'm not even a student, really. But at least I know the difference between an ontological claim and an epistemic claim. And of course, he's making the claim that God exists. That's a logical extension of saying, I believe a God exists. Well, okay, would you believe that if God did not exist? No. So it entails that God exists. So, I mean, he just doesn't know the difference between epistemic and an ontological claim. And you obviously, and I said what, and you said the same thing, right? But that's because of him not understanding the difference.
world in which Allah exists?
My belief, yes.
Okay, well,
You make a
confusing
distinction between
epistemology
belief and
ontology.
knowledge.
I'm making it.
It's not even, Yusuf, it's not even between
No,
belief and
no,
knowledge
no.
at this stage. It's between
Exactly.
ontology and epistemology. That's where Hamza's confused.
A distinction here. See, for example, I'm not telling you God exists.
Yes, you are. You are saying that. When you say, I believe God exists, and you have reasons, that entails that you're telling me that God exists. And I'm telling you God does not exist. And what I mean by that is I don't believe God exists. And it entails in that if I've got good reasons, then God does not exist. That's the ontological claim. But when we have discussions, we are normally focused on the epistemic part of it. Why is it that the claim? It's fine for me to say I don't believe a God exists or God does not exist. Somebody's going to ask me why. And at that point, we get into the epistemic claims.
But what you could have done is you could have shown him what the consequence is of what he is saying. Like, so you believe that a God exists? Yes. Is it possible that this God does not exist?
I suppose if he knew what he was talking about, he'd have to say yes.
But would he? No, he will not do that.
No, probably not. But I just think there's a confusion here
Of course there is.
Because he doesn't
I
want to
would
take
use
on, and I don't see why not, right? I don't know. Yeah, anyway. I mean, we could ask him more questions about why he doesn't, maybe he doesn't know that. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know the difference between ontology and epistemology. So he wants to steer clear of what he thinks is like too strong a claim or something like, I don't know.
I'm telling you, I believe God exists. Whether you believe it or not is irrelevant to me. I'm not asserting my belief upon you.
Do you think?
Of course you are. Okay, at this point, this is a profound confusion, and I hear this from I won't say so many, but a number of theists. What did he say there? Let me just, because obviously we talked over it. Where are we now? We're at 1:18:47. I just want to go back just a few seconds here.
It's difficult.
God exists. I'm telling you, I believe God exists. Whether you believe it or not is irrelevant to me. I'm not asserting my belief upon you.
Okay, I'm going to go into this now, so I won't comment on because I think I'm going to say a reasonable response to this, but if not, I can always comment afterwards. Hang on a sec.
Do you think? Okay, Hamza, there's two things here. One is your belief. The other is the state of being, the ontological state of. There's a state of affairs in the world. In that state of affairs, in your eyes, God exists, right?
I believe God exists.
so.
Yeah, there's a belief about God, and
I
then
accept it,
there's the
yes.
proposition that a God exists. Those are
I
two
accept the
separate
proposition.
things.
Right.
Right,
So
but that
if I'm
proposition
telling
is
you, no, but here's the problem, Rob. If I'm telling you I've accepted a proposition, I'm not imposing that proposition.
And this is another problem with Hamza that I think we've all realized, right? He doesn't want to listen and learn, especially with critics. Maybe he'll go away and learn by himself. It took him 5 months to try and understand what a belief meant when Sarah first brought it to him in the park. But in this case, because he's quite ignorant on this topic, he will interrupt incessantly and continue to press a point that he doesn't really understand. And this is quite tiresome and it's unhelpful. He doesn't learn by doing this. If he keeps telling me what he believes and I'm explaining to him why that's not the case, and I can logically point that out, if I have enough time to do so, he'd learn something. But for him to even accept that he's got to learn something in front of all of his Dawah people, he's not going to do that, right? Because there's a bravado and an ego that needs to be kept intact, and he needs to be seen as the lion, etc., etc. So it's very unlikely that he's going to listen to maybe realize something. And if he understood me fully, then he could critique it. But at this stage, I just don't think he understands the critique I'm leveling.
One thing you could have done here is just simply say, is your position something that is condoned by your God and the Quran?
I guess he would have to say yes. It depends what, and he might say to me, what do you mean by your position?
Well, that you don't care whether I believe or not.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. You mean non-believers, whether you don't care whether they believe. Yeah. Well, he could, I suppose what he could come back and say is, well, God knows, but, all I'm trying to do is do Dawah, but I don't actually care whether you, I don't know whether you could actually say, I don't care whether you
I don't think you
convert
can.
or not. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's maybe an interesting point to talk about with some Muslim. Can you say that? And can you just leave it in Allah's hands? Well, what's the point then of doing Dawah if you genuinely don't care?
Go to the Quran. Always go to the Quran. If you any chance that you get, any chance.
But I think that they could pull something out of the Quran that says it's, Allah knows best. But then that would seemingly contradict them going out doing Dawah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
On you.
Do you believe it's true?
I believe it's true, yes.
Okay. Do you think other people who are rational should believe something if it's true?
I believe if they go for the reasons why I believe it's true, yes.
Yes, then you are actually saying
No.
that people that
You
No,
see how the
no.
logic follows and he doesn't understand it. That's the point I've made with lots of people, right? When you say you're not imposing your belief, what's actually happening is, you know, if you think your belief is true, you've got good reasons, you think other people should believe it and be convinced by good reasons, then it is entailed that you think they should believe what you believe.
Exactly.
This is straightforwardly obvious. And there's no point. I don't see the point of him hiding away or trying to sidestep this. We all do it. I'm quite happy to say that's what I do. If I've got a good position, I expect it.
Nothing.
Sorry?
No reaction. The other 4, no reaction whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think probably Yusuf is tracking it, probably, or hopefully.
But
But I'm not sure if the
doing
other guys
poker
are.
face. He's not reacting. He's not saying, Hamza, wait, whoa.
No,
Think
but-
about what you're doing.
No, he's not. But when Hamza's in full flow like this, right, they're probably a bit cautious to interrupt him. Maybe. I don't know. I don't
I
know
think
what's
they're
going on with him.
intimidated by this idiot. By
I
this-
don't know
by
what the
this-
hierarchy is or how it works, but I think when he's in full flow, and I've seen it in the park as well, it's they don't normally interrupt until the atheist or the interlocutor says something, then they'll jump in with another question. So it's they're very rare, if ever, that I've seen them interrupt Hamza and say, hang on a moment, Hamza, maybe that's not the way, or maybe blah, 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 whatever. I've not seen that myself.
No,
You're
I'm not.
mistaken, Hamza.
No, I'm not. You're
One of your
mistaken,
friends
Rob.
here can help you. You're
Rob, here,
mistaken.
Rob,
you're
if I
dumb as hell,
tell
my
you
friend.
God exists, if
Who's
I
the
tell you God
idiot?
exists, I'm a certainty you God exists.
Oh, no,
And you're-
this guy here, this Evo guy, I think was a troll, and they kicked him out. He said a few words, and after a couple of words, I think they kicked him. I think he was a troll.
stupid for not believing in God. I am not doing that. I'm
I
saying to you,
didn't say
I
you're being
believe.
stupid, Hamza. I didn't say you're being stupid. I'm saying that there is
saying you're being
there is
stupid.
an inference that if I'm rational and you got good reasons, I should believe what you believe.
I'm
That
saying
there's an
to you
inference
is this.
there.
I'm saying to you is this. My reasons for believing in the existence of a creator are 100% logical. That's what I'm saying, right?
Do you
I'm
think
not
I've got good
saying.
reasons?
That's your
You
claim.
think
I
I've
believe
got good
yes, my
reasons?
reasons are 100% logical.
Bring-
Yes.
bring-
Right?
I'm not asking if they're logical. That's a very
You see, he didn't answer my question. He says that they're logical. Well, that's the like I said before, that's the minimum bar. I mean, that's like a trivial point. Unless you could demonstrate somebody's reasons are irrational off the bat, you're going to accept that they're reasonable or logical. I mean, I take it that somebody's coming to me with what they think are logical reasons. If I can show they're illogical, that's fine. But what I'm really interested in are they sound? So there's validity and soundness. Validity goes to the structure. Can I show something within the structure of the thought process that is invalid, in which case we don't even need to get to soundness. But if it's valid, then I'm going to the soundness, i.e. the content. Now I'm going to challenge the content of whatever the claim is. If the claim is logical, that's virtually most claims are logical in the sense that they don't involve a contradiction. But that's like a trivially low bar. There's why would you even? I would never even remotely. I just take that for granted, and so does most people in a conversation. So I don't know why he's harping on about this. I think he thinks that that's some sort of bar that he's overcome that's like amazing or something. No, it's trivial.
low bar. That's
sorry?
the lowest bar you can have. That's like getting
Okay,
the first
rational.
bar of the
Rational,
ladder. That's
reasonable.
That's trivially, don't pat yourself on the
no,
back.
Did you hear what he said there? Rational, reasonable. He now conflated two things. Rational and reasonable, right? I think I did hear it, but I don't know if I responded here directly now. But there were two things he said there. One is rational, one is reasonable. Reasonable is a whole different ballgame. They're not even in the same ballpark.
That's nothing to be. That's a trivial point.
So you're
I don't
saying.
mind-
Believe in something that's
sorry,
logical.
just so I understand, Rob.
Oh, did somebody else speak there? I don't know. I thought it was you, Stops.
Rob, just so I understand, are you saying if I say my belief is rational, logical, and reasonable, you're saying to me that's a low position to hold?
No,
Rob
you
is an
said.
idiot.
Okay, you said.
Can you not make derogatory comments, please?
Yeah, pick that guy.
Please don't make derogatory comments. We're trying to have a civil discussion here, please. If you come
Who
on the
was that,
panel,
guys?
please be respectful.
It was Evo. It's just get him.
Yeah, Evo's gone then.
Okay, so where
Yeah,
were
Can
that
I
wasn't
just come
me.
in there
That was
for 1
one
second?
hundred
What
percent.
are you saying?
That was you.
Okay, now it broke my train of thought, I think, at this stage. Because what I wanted to say at this point is he conflated three things together and then suggesting, do I think that he's wrong on that? I was challenging
Logical,
specifically
rational, and reasonable.
the logical point of view and saying that's a low bar. But then he conflated reasonable and what was the other one? Rational and reasonable. Logical, rational.
logical,
I think those two
rational,
are
and
kind of
reasonable.
pretty much the same. So the reasonable one I'm going to challenge, obviously. And there's no ways I'm going to accept that it's reasonable. Otherwise, I would believe it too. But I can quite happily accept if there's no contradiction that it's rational in the sense that it doesn't violate a law of logic. But that's trivial. I'm not concerned with that.
My position.
Yeah, sorry,
I'm
bro.
not
It's
telling
just rude,
you-
man.
I'm not telling you I'm
It
not
wasn't
making
Hatem.
an assertive claim to
He
you.
just said it was.
He said it wasn't him.
Oh, okay, feel free to come back on, bro. So it's a bit confusing.
No, when
let's-
he spoke, his thing went off. His thing went off.
Let's try again quickly on this, and then we can move on. If Hamza, there's certain things that follow logically, and if you believe that what you believe is true, you've got good reasons, and you think that rational people should believe things that are true, then you're inferring that I should believe what you believe. You can't get away from that.
No. That's different though. I'm not telling you something else.
Do you hear the no? It's like it's a default position of him to respond with no.
I've heard this a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
It's a fact.
Hamza,
Yeah.
do you believe that God
You
exists?
don't
and
have to
good
believe
reasons?
it. Rob.
I mean, he just talks over me all the time, right? Thinking that I don't have to believe it. I mean, at this point, I think further commentary on this. I think we've said everything we need to say on this, right? With Hamza. Hopefully, it moves on to somebody else now shortly.
Rob.
Okay, let's
No,
move
no,
on. I'm not
he's
gonna-
not
we're not
saying-
going to accept this point. Maybe one of your friends can assist you with this.
Okay,
Let's move on.
He's not trying to say
we're not
that,
getting anywhere here.
He's not trying to say that by admitting to what he's just said there that you're going to try to force people. All he's saying is that you believe that there is good reason, and if there is good reason, that people should, if they wish to follow reason well, they should become Muslim. And I think it's fair to say that we do want that. Like,
There you go. So Yusuf understood the point,
You
right?
understood? Yeah, that's exactly the point. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Yusuf.
I would
That's
say
exactly what
that-
I'm saying. Yeah.
So I would say that I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I believe I have good reasons to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I have good reasons to believe Islam is the true religion. And I want other people to be Muslim as well. And I think
And if
people
they're
should.
rational,
Okay,
and
now
Yusuf,
let's
if they're
talk about it.
rational, and you give them good reasons, you would expect them to believe it, correct?
Yes. And so
Yes.
they,
That's all we needed, right?
Exactly.
How
This is totally
difficult was that?
different. This is the opposite of what Hamza just said.
Yep. Totally understands it, right? That's why I want to speak to this guy more, because at least we can have a discussion and we don't have to bounce around on trivial points and
Yeah,
misunderstandings and
exactly.
not understanding the point. We can have something potentially more substantive of a discussion, right? And he seems like, a decent guy from the bit of discussion we had here.
I would expect
It's not a
them,
problem.
if they're being reasonable and they're being open-minded to the positions that I put forward, that it would follow from that
Correct.
that they should become Muslim.
Correct. It's not a big
But that's
deal.
that's not implying. I think there was a bit of a confusion.
Yeah,
Maybe you
it's
thought
not
that
forcing,
it
but
implied
it's a logical
force.
inference. Yeah, it's a logical
No, but what's
inference.
the
It's not
difference
like
if I
you
come to
have
you
holding a
and say,
hammer over
Rob,
somebody's head.
Oh, Hamza, shut
If
up.
I come to you, Rob, and say God exists, do I not need to prove that claim?
Yes, you need to give reasons, but the expectation is
Yeah. I mean, he's gone back to that again now.
Yeah, he should shut up when adults are talking.
that if you give good reasons, and I'm a rational person who cares about the truth, I should be convinced.
There's more to human beings than rationale, to be honest with you. But the point here is
Let's
this.
move on. Let's move
Oh
on.
my God.
No, I don't want to. I just want to establish this.
Okay, but it's
I think it's a very important
Yusuf has
principle to
understood it.
establish.
Yeah, Yusuf understood it, and really, I should have just let him babble on here and then gone to Yusuf and say, okay, Yusuf, can I put this to you or whatever? Because I didn't, I suppose I could have spoken to Abbas or Imran. I don't think Jordan was going to say much then. And Ben said he was the host, so he wasn't going to get involved anyway.
No, I agree with you. I agree that Yusuf is the only guy who's remotely, I don't know what he actually does. I don't actually know what he says. I don't know what his position is. I've not bumped into him yet. I've seen him once or twice where he was talking nonsense, but here, definitely not.
I'm saying to you, my belief is none of your business. First thing, I'm not trying to assert it onto you. I'm telling you why I believe and the reasons why. I'm not. I don't care. In reality, whether you
Sure
believe
you
what I
do.
believe is
Don't you,
irrelevant.
of course you
Just
can.
if I told you,
Absolutely
just as I told you, I believe my father's my father, and I give you all the rational reasons, or he looks like me, and this, that, the other. Whether you believe he's my father is irrelevant.
Let's move on. You're talking nonsense. Yusuf has explained it.
No,
You need to-
Rob.
Again,
No,
many of
I'm
these
not
things,
talking nonsense,
Hamza,
mate.
it takes you a long time to
Yes,
understand
you
it.
are.
I don't want to battle with you over this. There's other guys that I can speak to as well here. You're
Rob,
battling with this.
Rob, you know
You
what-
are asserting that your belief is true, and if it's rational, I should believe it too. By the way, I do the same, and I don't have a problem
Rob,
with that.
calm
You
down,
just got to
man.
accept
Calm
that that's
down.
the case.
Yeah.
I am calm, but I suppose in a sense I'm like Ampesh, because it does get a bit tedious with Hamza in particular. And like in the car, and I was shivering a bit because it was so damn cold sitting out in the car. And it's not even fully winter yet. Holy crap, I don't know what it'll be like in full-on winter. I'm going to have to wear like a jumpsuit or
This
something.
is full-on winter. It's not going to get colder.
Oh,
It's global warming.
that's good to hear.
Have a nice conversation, Rob. There's no need to get.
I'm cool.
I understand in some other streams it might be really aggressive in
We're
that.
just having a conversation with
Chill out, bro. No shouting.
I'm cool. Sorry.
Rob,
I shouted.
Rob, by-
Yeah, you sound a bit tense.
Rob, by Hamza saying he believes, if I say to you I believe in God, I may be inferring also that I could be wrong. So I'm not really forcing it on anyone, or even if
Yeah, I don't think Jordan understands it here, and this is like unnecessary additional commentary here.
I was
No,
trying to
I'm
convince
really
someone else of a
disappointed.
belief.
Sorry?
I'm really disappointed. No, I had much higher expectation when I heard Jordan speak for the first time.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to him as well at that point, and I think I've also sort of subsequently heard and listened to him a little bit. And
10 seconds with him on Safaz.
okay. Yeah, I think I've spoken to him once on some channel either, but we didn't get to speak for very long. I can't remember specifically what it's about, but anyway.
Jordan, did you hear what we said after that? If you believe in God and you think you have good reasons, and you think other people should care about good reasons and follow the truth, then it follows from that other people should be convinced if in fact your reasons are good. It's a
How is that any
Easy.
different from
Yeah.
the atheist position? How is that any different from
No,
the
he said it's
atheist
the
position?
Abbas is also not following. He's saying, and I said it before, right? You heard me a few sentences ago. I said, and I do that too, and I have no problem with it. Those were kind of the words I said about 20 seconds before this. So I'm acknowledging that I do it too. So I don't know why Abbas is asking this. He wasn't listening to what I said.
It's different. I've acknowledged
Yeah,
this
you
exactly
said
the
it
same.
was
I've got no
okay.
problem with that.
Okay.
Let's move on to the other point, because the other point, I think there were two other points that I wanted to bring up, and obviously I don't want to take the whole of your time, and there's plenty of other guys, but there's two other things. One was this claim about evolution and a God, and I think that the way Hamza framed it was not, if I can be diplomatic about it, I think it was poorly framed. And each of the atheists said the same thing, and Hamza either didn't remember it, didn't hear it, or ignored it entirely. So his question
what
was,
did I ask?
hey,
The question I asked.
I will tell you. The question was, hey, does evolution disprove a God? And that is not an honest question.
Oh, okay, that's
Because-
not what I
and I'll
asked.
tell you why.
That's not what he asked.
That's
Right,
what
let's
he
hear what
asked.
he-
did.
let's listen to what he claims
This
he
is
asked.
exactly what he said. This is what atheists tell him.
Okay, but let's hear what he claims he said, because I think he's going to say it now.
You're paraphrasing it. Shall I tell you what I said?
What was said?
All right, so I'll ask you the question, Rob. Do you believe if the theory of evolution is true, that disproves the existence of a creator?
Okay, and I'm going to answer. Hang on, wait, stops. Hang on. Let me just see if I say it here, because I'm thinking I said what I would say.
How is that different from what I just said?
There you go. I just asked the question. How is that different from what I just said?
Oh, this guy's priceless.
I don't know what to say. I mean, that's what's the difference between what I said and what he said?
He said creator.
And I said God. Okay, well,
Yes.
is there? Okay, fair enough. Stops. If that's what they're going to quibble on, the creator is God, right? Unless you're going to say creator is not God, which, yeah. So basically, it's exactly the same thing. So maybe he's listening. I'm trying to understand how his brain works. Maybe he's listening for the exact same words that he used, and any word that might be different,
keywords,
even if it's synonymous, he's going to reject immediately. And I
maybe
think
trigger
that's
words.
not. I think that's not charitable in any way, right? Because if all I'm doing is representing the position, right, and he's arguing with the semantics of the position, which, as far as I can tell, is there's zero difference between them. It's fine if he wants to argue something, but how am I paraphrasing inaccurately? I don't get it.
Well, you're talking about your father, not your dad.
Okay, well, in that case, if you're going to be that nitpicky, and you could be nitpicky if you want to, but then tell me that's what it is that you mean. Hey, Rob, you didn't say the word creator. You said the word God, and that's why I disagree. I'm going to go, okay, now let's talk about that. Is there a difference between creator and God, and blah, blah, blah. We can go down that route. But tell me what it is that you think I'm misrepresenting. Don't say the basically almost exactly the thing that I said with no substantive difference, and then tell me that I said something else, or I paraphrased you.
Yeah.
I'm asking. I'll just answer the question I asked in those words.
Which creator? That's my point. Which creator? Because it's a you're just making it like a
The which creator would follow
the
as a
creator I
which
believe in.
creator?
Guys, could I just address this very briefly? So, there's one thing that you're doing, Rob, often, which I see, is that and atheists do this, and I don't know why this thinking is, and this is what Hunter was dealing with in the first place. That as soon as you posit a creator, you start asking about which creator, and you bring all of the.
Why do you think I might want to do that, Imran, or any other atheist? Do you think there's a reason that every atheist does that? And let's see, maybe I'll ask him that question. I can't remember what I actually said here.
Myriad concepts of the creator that might be into the equation.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with that is it doesn't actually deal with the problem. So it doesn't actually deal with the question that we're trying to answer. Because you can have multiple
Yes, it does.
theories about a concept. None of those multiple theories, however many they may be, just by existing, negates the existence of the concept in the first place, or an observation in the first place. For example, having more than one theory of gravity.
Okay, he's going off on a tangent now and bringing me an analogy again.
But he talks a lot.
Yeah, I think he does go into a bit of a long ramble here, which isn't helpful. And maybe what and you did it right in the other one. Maybe I need to do that when somebody's sort of rambled on for a while, and then what I need to do is summarize down the most important point that I think is worth discussing and say, hey, let me summarize your position, and here's what I think is most important out of that, or something like that. Otherwise, there's a long ramble here, and I think I let him go on for a while here, which I should have jumped in a bit earlier. And I do start to jump in.
We're being polite, Rob. I am taught to be polite. Okay, so this is why I let him talk, thinking that they are going to extend the same courtesy, which they don't.
Yeah, and especially when it's 5 people on there, they all want to say something, or at least they're all thinking something to jump in at any point here. And so that's why I've become quite focused on saying things quickly and concisely, because I know I'm going to get cut off and I won't get to finish it. And that's something I've tried to improve on all the time. But sometimes you can't do it in like 5 minutes or 5 seconds. You've got to have a little bit longer on it.
Gravity that might be being discussed doesn't negate the gravity exists. Having more than one theory about how evolution works would not negate the evolutionary process. So the fact that there are other concepts of the creator doesn't negate the existence of the creator in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing to do is let's agree a foundational. So what is it? The question to ask really is, before you go into this, which creator you're talking about, specifically say what criteria are we applying to this word that you're using as a creator, and then we can move forward from there, rather than bringing this false.
So that's what I'm doing. I'm saying what is the criteria for this creator? Don't just give me some vacuous claim, it's all powerful, it's all knowing. Well, how many creators fit that bill, right? A deist creator could fit that bill, we don't know. And evolution, common descent doesn't disprove a deist God, which is what I say later on anyway. So we've got to get very specific.
What is here is that he's saying gravity and things like that. There are no different gravities. There is only one gravity. You can't go around and say, well, there's different gravities, and now you need to choose which one. That doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so when somebody says, hey, I'm talking about gravity, they're talking about the attraction of two bodies, right? Yeah. There's no other version. When somebody says, hey, I believe in a God, there's a myriad of gods with different attributes, etc. Some evolution can prove, some evolution can disprove, right? So, but that's the point I'm trying to get to after, I think, when he finishes here.
The idea that, there's loads of the concepts of God, therefore God doesn't exist, because it doesn't follow.
I didn't say that. That's a complete non sequitur. At no point am I saying that.
I'm going for a leak.
I'm not saying God doesn't exist. Imran, hang on.
Great. So let's define what we mean by the term, and then we can move on from that.
That's what I'm asking for, and Hamza is not doing that. He's giving
okay.
generic
I'll do exactly what I did. I believe the creator is the first cause of the universe, everything that exists. Nothing on that stream we did on Friday mentioned religion. Nothing.
No, it did, but okay, you need to go rewatch it. But that's a side point. I'm talking. Let me make it simple for you. Evolution does not disprove a deist God. Evolution, common descent, does disprove a theist God, where the theist specific God's claim is that man was created by God alone and is not from a common ancestor. Would you agree that it falsifies that theistic God?
Every one of them should say yes if they believe in the Quran. I would be very surprised if a Muslim comes along and says, no, but the Quran points to common descent. I mean, have you ever heard that, Stops? And if you have, what have you got to say about it? Hello, Stops? Have I lost connection here, or?
I thought you heard me. I said I'm going for a leak, and I thought you heard me. I thought you heard.
Sorry, man. I don't know what's going on here.
No, I said I just threw in. I'm going for a leak, and I heard it.
Oh no, I didn't hear you at all there. I think I lost connection there for a minute. No, I didn't hear you there. Sorry, man.
Because we're not using the comments and things like that, so I thought let me quickly throw it in and.
Sorry, guys, I didn't hear Stops went to the toilet at all there. Okay, so I'm coming through clearly. Okay, thanks, guys. I didn't know there was this silence there. I mean, have I lost connection or something like that? So I don't know if you heard it, Stops. Maybe I can just say again.
Yeah,
I asked. Oh, you heard it. What's your view on that?
Okay, the thing is that I agree with you. The thing is that if you say just a general a creator, it doesn't make any sense, because we're talking about a specific one. If you're talking about evolution and disproving or sort of getting rid of the concept of a creator, it can only be if you have a common descent. If you don't have common descent, and no Muslim is going to say that there's common descent, well, there are Muslims now doing that, sorry, but none of these guys, the fundamentalist Muslims, will say that. So if you want to go and say, well, there's a pointer towards guided evolution or something, even including human beings, you are no longer being a real Muslim.
Okay, and again, they would have to present their claims. It seems to me at this point, every one of these guys could go, yep, we don't accept common descent here.
Yeah, they should, if they were honest.
And at least they should say, and I think we get onto this shortly, at least they should say, well,
point.
We don't
That's
accept...
So good. That's so good, Rob. You just got something. If anybody gets into this situation again, go and do this. Yusuf, do you believe in common descent? No. Abbas, do you believe this? Ben, do you believe this? Jordan, Imran, Hamza, do you believe this? And just put them against the ropes, because there is nothing that they can say.
Well, actually, Abbas does actually say that he thinks that, later on he'll actually say that he thinks that Adam and Eve, or the first humans, were magically created. Well, magically, I mean created by Allah, right? That's what he will say. And I'm surprised the others didn't agree. But let's just see how far. Okay. To me, I was expecting them all to say yes here. But that, of course, would challenge Hamza's view.
The thing is that there are a couple of Muslims now who are saying that they were intentionally separately created. But that doesn't work, because the Quran says that you are the followers, or you are the family of Adam and Eve. They were the ancestors of you. So you can't really do that, even though some Muslims try and do that.
So you're saying that some Muslims say that us, as in modern humans, were created separately from Adam and Eve?
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant, right? Because the point is, does it disprove the Quranic claim of Adam and Eve? That's the point here. Or at least that's the point I'm making. Maybe somebody else is making a different point. But let's see what happens here. I was surprised that not one of them would be prepared to say this, except Abbas, but he didn't actually say it directly.
No, because there's a number of explanations you could give, which would still include that. So, for example, like we don't even deny, well, we can't deny that change occurs over time.
That wasn't the question, but all right, let him go on. Yeah, that wasn't the question, right?
If we have a common ancestor with Adam and Eve, how else would you describe all the different races? So we would say that from Adam and Eve, changes obviously do occur.
But that's completely besides the point. Maybe I wasn't clear, but I think I was. But maybe I could have made it clearer for Yusuf. I'm not interested in what happened after Adam and Eve. That is we're not even talking about what happened after Adam and Eve.
No,
we're talking about what happened
before
Adam and Eve, if there was a before. You claim there wasn't a before. I claim, or evolution claims, that there were common ancestors. So there were bipedal hominids prior to Adam and Eve, which changed over time, and there's no specific point at which you can point to, that's the humans are at that point at 25 million BC or whatever, 100,000 BC, there's the first humans. But the guys that were born before them, they weren't human. Nobody can do that, right? Not according to evolution, at least. But if you want to do that, then you're denying common descent. So he's going off on a separate point here. This is completely irrelevant.
Because you've got different races. What we would deny is that it doesn't make sense. We would say that it's false to say that it doesn't make sense that if there is an all-powerful God, that he could create a world where animals evolve and change and things occur, and then in the middle of that, he could not place two beings.
Okay, Yusuf, let me ask you something. Does your claim about these two beings, do they have a common ancestor that was something like in between a chimp and a human?
I'm now asking him directly, right?
No,
so what you asked me to do?
They put my comment on the screen by mistake.
Yeah, I saw that. But now you see what you asked me to do. I'm now doing with him. Let's just see what he says.
No, I would say that Adam and Eve were created without parents, and that they were placed on Earth.
No ancestors, correct? No ancestors.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you agree that evolution, commonly understood as being common descent, falsifies, or your claim and evolution are in contradiction with each other?
No, I would say that evolution occurs.
Okay, so you didn't answer my question directly.
No, come on, you can say yes or no.
Yeah.
Necessarily have common descent.
Okay, so now he's claiming that you can have evolution without common descent. Where's he getting that from?
You can't.
I mean, what are you talking about now? Some other version of evolution you just made up, or some random, out there outlying type of something that somebody's dreamt up?
That's the basis of evolution.
No, because there's a difference between like a Darwinian
Oh,
evolution.
yeah,
and
he's been listening to too much Sabur, right? He's been listening to too much Sabur, and he's confusing the mechanism with the actual main claim, right? The mechanism is, Darwinian evolution or whatever the case is. One of our colleagues sent me a list, right? There's almost nobody that's not a intelligent designer creationist that doesn't accept common descent. Whatever the other mechanism is at this point, I'm not interested in. I'm not talking about that. Right, so he's now confused the mechanism for the main evolutionary claim of common descent, right? So that's where he's mistaken now.
And
I'm not talking
the
about
general
Darwinian
theory of evolution.
Well, we were talking about Darwinian evolution.
All I'm talking about is common descent. Every single, and you can ask Sabur this as well, every single, as far as I can tell, evolutionary biologist, evolutionary philosopher accepts common descent. Doesn't matter about the mechanism. I'm not even talking about the mechanism. But if common descent is true, then your understanding of the Islamic creation thing is in contradiction with that view of evolution. Agree?
But you can't say ignore Darwinian evolution because we're specific about it.
He's not getting the point here, unfortunately, again. Let me just see if Abbas jumps in. I think he jumps in quite soon, and I should have pressed everybody else at this moment to see if they agree with Abbas.
The original video.
Can I just say one thing here, Hamza? Can I just say one thing?
EFDawah
we believe that Adam.
Sorry, what's this?
Heisenberg is just asking. I'm just saying. I thought you were going to go.
I know this is EFDawah. So this is EFDawah. You can see it on the screen here.
It's always one of the two.
Yeah, but this one is EFDawah, where they were reviewing Hamza's Den. So this is EFDawah. So I'm looking at the video itself here. I can give you let me share it so you can go watch the whole thing yourself. There we go. You go watch it from the beginning if you like. Here's the full video for you, and you can see that's
the big
the
channel
same one.
EFDawah if you want that one. There you can have even more fun.
There's some more on EFDawah, yeah, but this is the link to this particular one. So let's just hear Abbas now quickly.
Adam and Eve were a creation of God. Okay.
I understand.
Now we don't deny that there may well have been things that existed that were not completely human before Adam and Eve, but we believe that Adam and Eve were a supernatural creation inserted within that mechanism. That is something that is supernatural.
That's all I'm asking you to accept. And that is in contradiction. And I'll say it again on the stream, I'm sure. That's in contradiction with common descent. That's all I'm saying. You cannot get away from this. And why they want to fight this, I think because they've been listening to Sabur and they've confused the mechanism for the main underlying claim of evolution. And also maybe they want to be seen as more, quote, scientific or something. Who knows? But this part was just baffling for me, really.
But he's playing around with the words as well. So he's got everybody confused with Darwinian and non-Darwinian and evolutionism and Darwinism, and it's what he's doing is totally crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't debate the Darwinian part of it. One of my colleagues who has looked into this a lot more just said to me that that's more devastating. If Darwinian evolution is the main mechanism, that makes it even worse for them because now it's through environmental pressure, selection pressure, right, which makes it worse. So that's why Sabur wants to challenge the Darwinian part, but the common descent part is, that's really not up for challenge, or certainly not up for challenge in academic circles as far as I can tell. And that's the only part I need here. I don't even need to go to the mechanism. And that's what at least Yusuf didn't understand. And the moment Abbas made the claim that they were inserted, well, he's now he's falsified common descent.
No, the height of Adam was 900 cubits, which is like 30 meters.
Yeah. So I don't know whether they actually believe that's true.
This was a question in the chat.
Yeah, I see that. Maybe it would be, again, you can always look afterwards and go, had I thought about it at the moment, I would have gone, okay, do you believe Adam was 90 feet tall or something? I mean, it's a little bit off the point, but what they would show is that these were special beings that came in because all the other beings, there's no other beings that we're aware of that were anywhere remotely close to that height. So if these beings were magically inserted, then that would be a claim that you could confirm, right? If we found the bones of these magical beings or their descendants that were still that tall, then we'd go, okay, wow, that's not what evolution suggests, and you could falsify evolution with something like that.
And therefore, hold on a second, and therefore, that in itself does not falsify whether a creator exists or doesn't exist.
That's not the point that I was making, and I'm going to say it now. I'm pretty sure I'll say it. Let's see if how much trust I've got in myself.
Because we believe it's a supernatural interaction within that process. So it could be or it might not be, but regardless, it's supernatural. So
Okay.
the issue here, Rob, actually is this. Before we even
Okay,
jump
now
onto...
he goes off the point. I should have just interrupted him here. Now he goes on to talk about the beginning of the universe. I mean, talk about a red herring, a tangential point going off in a completely different view. I should have just jumped in at this point. So I'm not going to get a chance because he's now going to go to, cosmic origins. But at the point there where he said that God inserted them, that all I wanted to know is that falsifies it, right? And he's saying, no, there could have been other beings around. Well, what view are you suggesting that accepts in the world? What does that represent in the world? It's not common descent and evolution. So what are you talking about? Something else now? Because remember, Hamza's claim was about evolution not disproving a God. And of course, I'm saying that's a bad question to ask, and Stops and T-Jump and everybody else specifically, and I said the same, that it disproves certain gods. And now they're trying to argue, well, no, it doesn't, but they're misunderstanding all of them, it seems. It's just baffling.
Evolution, we need to answer where the universe itself, the playground for all this
Not
creation...
at the moment, Abbas, we don't need to.
No, excuse me, we do need to, because I'll tell you why,
We're
Rob.
talking about this
No,
particular
Rob, I'll tell you why.
on the stream. You're going
Rob,
off on
I'll give you a rational reason why you need to do that first.
No, you don't.
Because if you establish from a reasoned argument that there is a necessity for a first cause, and that first cause is the creator of everything, then quite frankly, the evolutionary mechanism is irrelevant, because you've already established that a creator has to exist by necessity. So you're jumping the gun at the moment. You need to go back first to creation of this universe and how it's come about in the very
You
first
speak on this if you want to. Yeah, go ahead.
Abbas, you're being a total fool here, because if you're talking about the benefits of the indicator stalk of a Mercedes 600, you don't have to go back to the original Daimler from 120 years ago to see how they did it. We're talking about something specific in connection with today, with the today's understanding of something. We're not talking about the history of something. That's different. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's going, well, if we can prove that a creator exists, then we don't even have to talk about this. But we do, because the claim was nothing about whether the creator exists. The claim was that atheists come to Hamza and they say to him, evolution disproves God. And you'll hear me ask later on which God and why does he think they say that, right? That comes a little bit later on. But if that's the point we're talking about. If God exists, if some God exists, let's suggest for a moment that a God is more plausible or is necessary or whatever the case is, that for a universe, that still doesn't answer the question that Hamza put forward, which is, does evolution disprove God? And if what we mean by evolution is common descent, and if it's your particular God, then humans are wrong about this, right? That's the point. If your God exists, he created the universe, and he did it according to the Quran, then evolution is wrong. That's all I need you to accept. And it's like, we just can't get there. You've got to go to the universe.
Place without jumping many billions of years ahead and many steps ahead and start talking about human evolution.
Abbas, the claim that Hamza put forward was nothing to do with cosmology or anything like that. The claim was that evolution, commonly understood as common descent, is compatible with a God. And obviously, we've critiqued it a bit more. We're talking about a specific God. And I said, and I'm quite happy to agree that a deist God is not falsified.
I didn't make a claim, Rob.
That a deist God is not falsified by evolution.
No, but I didn't make a claim.
Like with what you just made, I tell you what, you speak, because if you interrupt me incessantly, we don't get anywhere. I know you've got a lot of ego, but just take it easy.
Okay, it's nothing to do with ego.
It does. You want to interrupt incessantly.
Well, if you misrepresent me...
Have I misrepresented you? You haven't misrepresented you at all.
This is exactly what it is.
I have to interrupt you. All right? I didn't make any claim.
Again, because he's ignorant on what a claim is, when he makes a claim, when there's a claim involved, when you're making a point about the world, you're making a claim. And your specific claim was, hey, atheists come to me and they say that evolution disproves a God. That in itself, you could put a question mark after it. If you look at that, it's still a claim. You're saying something about the world. You're making a claim about reality. You're saying atheists do X. That is a claim. You can put a question mark after it to try and hide from saying it's a claim. That's not going to work.
You're always making a claim. When you open your mouth and you make a proposition, you're making a claim.
What are we going on talking
Speak to your colleagues.
No.
You're profoundly
Yeah.
So you're interrupting me now.
Well, I have to interrupt you when you're making a mistake. Don't I?
I'm just going to play it back on him, right? He's got to interrupt me when I misrepresent him. So I just thought, okay, I've got to say the same back to you.
Make a mistake. I told you. So you're telling me if I ask a question.
But they realize this.
When you make a claim,
No, I don't
no,
think
can I
they
ask
realize that he's made any mistakes at all.
Yusuf is laughing.
Yeah, but I don't
Gordon
think
is
they're laughing
Imran is smiling.
Do you think that they think that he's made a mistake, though? I don't.
I think they realize this.
I don't. I think you're giving them more credit than I do. I don't think they are. I think they are laughing that we're having this discussion. I'm not sure that they're tracking it.
Question. When I ask a question, is that a claim?
there is a claim inherent in that. Yes.
Me asking a question.
Hamza, were we not
Can-
talking
can I-
about
can I-
Dawkins? Dawkins said
Can
that.
I
not,
just
not,
speak to
not
Yusuf or
anyone else.
Abbas or somebody? Because
Yeah, Dawkins said
this is
that,
like a dogpiling here. We can't get anywhere. So who
I was
can-
talking to Hamza actually, Rob. I was
Silence.
talking to Hamza, not you.
Yeah. So Dawkins said that you can be an atheist and believe in. You don't have to be an atheist to believe in evolution.
Yeah,
Yeah?
so Dawkins said it.
Dawkins said
Yes.
that. Now, the
That is the whole
evolution
point,
and how
yes.
Islam looks at evolution was going to be done on the next stream anyway, in detail. Yeah? Because we have to know as Muslims how to deal with this question. So we didn't even really go deep into it. I just wanted to challenge the claim when an atheist says, science has proven evolution, therefore there is no God. Which is
And what
completely against.
No.
And the atheist that says that, what specifically?
Well, I'm going to say it now. Hang on, stops. I think I'm going to say maybe say what you might be critiquing. If not, I'll stop it and you can add to it. One sec here, quick.
They're referring to when they say no God.
I'm assuming they're assuming to the God creator.
Okay.
Who?
Can I
Which
invite
one?
you, Hamza, not
It's
to make
usually against. It's
assumptions?
usually when it's against
Rather
creation.
ask them, what God are they talking about? Because if they
I
were
think
talking
it's
about a
just got a
deist
big
God, I would agree with you that it does not falsify a deist God. When they say they're talking about it falsifies God, they're talking your specific God. Rather than not making assumptions, that's not a good idea.
Or,
Are you
again,
speaking
like
about
I
my
said,
God,
on the
Allah,
next
or are you
stream,
speaking about some other God? If you ask
So
me
like
a
I
question,
said-
you'll quickly get an answer, won't you?
like I said, on the next stream, we'll
Okay, but
support.
he's like missed the point entirely, right?
Yeah,
He's assuming they're just speaking about a generic God. Why would you, in any? I cannot understand the rational thinking that would lead somebody to think that when an atheist asks somebody, especially if they know that you're a Muslim or that you're a Christian, that they're going to talk about a generic God. Why would they do that? Because they know that you don't believe that. Why would you in any way be led to think that they're talking about some other God other than your own? And why would you not just ask them, hey, when you say disprove God, which God are you talking about? My God? All gods? A different God? Which God? And they will very quickly, as I just said to him myself, very quickly tell you. So I just don't know what leads him to think that that's what atheists might be thinking.
Or your mate will demonstrate how, as Muslims, we view evolution, and how,
Completely irrelevant to this particular point that I'm talking about now, which is this claim about a generic God. So thank you for talking about a point that's irrelevant to what this specific point is.
how we understand it.
Hamza,
So you
did
might be
claim-
better. You might be
Hamza,
better to wait for that stream, get some more information, rather than the few books you've read. And
Hamza, there is one
take it
claim
off
on the
that
table
point.
here. There is one claim on the table, which was you asked the question, does evolution falsify God or a God?
Yeah.
And now we've gone to when, because that's the claim that you say atheists make. And I've just established with you that when an atheist says that, he's not talking about some generic God. He's likely talking, he knows you're a Muslim and he's saying your God.
Excellent,
And I
yeah.
spoke to Yusuf there, and I don't know whether we have agreement here or not, but if, as Abbas said, that Adam and Eve, or the first humans, were brought into existence by God and they did not have a common ancestor,
Yeah.
and evolution talks about common descent, and that includes humans, that evolution and the proposition that Abbas has put forward are in conflict. They cannot both be
Can I
true.
just make a statement here on this very point, Rob, that you're making? So one of the things that you're doing is you're trying to assert that science, whichever one, we're talking about evolution here specifically, can make some sort of claim about the supernatural.
Oh dear.
No.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
Oh, fuck, Imran, really, you're
Oh,
a doctor.
dear.
You should have learned how to think critically. You can't do this. This is a declaration of bankruptcy that you are delivering at the moment.
He's now going to go into which is what
Yeah,
some of them like to do, the philosophical underpinnings of science. That's not what we're talking about.
No.
And when I mean falsifies, like that the two propositions are in conflict. That's all I'm asking them to acknowledge. And the sophistry around this and the misunderstanding is just
Yeah, but
mind-boggling.
Rob, this is sad. This is sad. Like most Muslims are saying, wow, this is my dream team, and Imran and Abbas, and they are so great. And come on, if I see this is pitiful. Islam is collapsing around you, and you are coming with stupid things like this. You are totally ignorant. You don't know what you're talking about. You are uneducated. You don't even take the time to go and educate yourselves on the most vital, basic points. I don't know what you're doing. Do you only read the Quran and pat yourselves on the back? Don't you look at what it is that we are saying to be able to be, just to refute a little bit?
I think that's the key point, right? You've got to follow the conversation. The fact that you bring up, you now want to challenge the philosophical underpinnings of science tells me that you weren't tracking the main point. But here we go anyway.
And that's a jump that cannot be made, unfortunately. So because the fundamentals of science is, and the very basic fundamental principle is, there are no non-natural explanations.
Okay, so now I go into the whole thing with Sean Carroll. It's a shame. I should have just said irrelevant point and went and carried on. This took us down a tangent now about methodological naturalism and philosophical naturalism, and the view that and I agree with, and some people don't, right? Some people say no. By definition, science, even methodological naturalists might say that no, there's no way for science to demonstrate the supernatural. I'm not in agreement with that, but going down this point now wasn't helpful to the original thing. So I don't think we'll ever get. I don't think we finished this point where I could get them to accept that common descent was in conflict with their view of special creation of humans. I just never got there.
That's the basic fundamental on which science works. That is the underlying assumption that every single explanation has to be a natural explanation. It precludes and excludes the supernatural. So any claim that is now made about a supernatural
Stops, do you want to bring in this Abdel guy that's here?
Yeah, but I don't know if you want to stop here.
No, we can carry on. We're not going to finish tonight. We're only at 1:37, and it's going to finish at 3 hours. So we're a little over. We're probably going to have a part 3 and 4. And we might not even finish my part. How much more have I got here? Let's just see. They kicked me off at about 1:55, just over 1:55. So we've got.
Well, I'm happy to do that.
Another 20 minutes.
One suggestion: if something like this happens, it's always good. This is what I do. Is I say, no, it's not, but it's irrelevant. Let's go back to the original point. Without going into details, just showing that I disagree, but showing at the same time that I'm not willing to now discuss this point. And if they then insist, I will say, look, we can discuss this in a separate issue, but we're talking about something else at the moment. I am not consistent, unfortunately, because sometimes it's emotions and then I go there. But it's always good to go and say, no, it doesn't, but let's not go there now. Let's do something. Let's go back to the original point. So, yeah, this is my suggestion, if you can do it better than me.
Yeah, okay, I've put the link in there. We'll see if Abdel jumps in now. We'll carry on for a few moments, and then if he wants to come in.
There's another guy that I found on Facebook who was at the Gin and Tonic last week. But unfortunately, we had this other thing. I would love to get him on because he's a real big mouth.
Okay, I mean, what we could do is stop it next week if we want to and bring him in at the same time. I mean, we can always do that as well. So if Abdul wants to join, there's the link. I think I've given you the link for this one. So let me know. Either we'll see you pop up here or let me know if you can't join or something like that. Or we'll carry on in the meantime. Stops. I'm not looking at that. I might hear it because I think it pings when somebody comes. Okay. But I'm just going to carry on for now.
Within a chain of, say, natural occurrences, science will have no opinion on it. It cannot make an opinion on it. So when you try and then let me just finish my point, Rob, and then you can carry on. So when you then try to make the assertion that science says this precludes the supernatural, basically it's almost like using an underwater hairdryer. It's an oxymoron. Doesn't
Again, as soon as you bring up an analogy, I'm sort of holding my head.
Does he know that there are videos of an underwater hairdryer actually working? I wonder if he knows about this.
No, I didn't actually. So there you go.
I was surprised. I thought if you throw, the good old James Bond thing, if you, chuck a hairdryer, it'll immediately short circuit. It doesn't. It actually works. It will then eventually break because it's on, overload because the density of water is higher than that of air, so it will overload. But it will initially work.
Okay.
The natural process of the process of science, which looks at only natural explanations for natural occurrences, cannot say anything about the supernatural. Imran, so I want to see how are you bridging this gap?
Yeah, Imran, you're misunderstanding the position I'm having here. I am saying the following. Let me say it again. that if you guys all agree with a bus, that Adam and Eve were brought into existence by God and they do not have a common ancestor. In other words, there's nothing that came before them that eventually gave rise to what we call humans or Homo sapiens. If that's your view, and I presume you all have that view, and evolution, common descent says that humans had a common ancestor and there was no point where there was like a human as we currently understand it. It gradually happens over time. Would you agree that those two positions are in conflict? They cannot both be, you can't reconcile that.
There is a conflict between the idea that we all came from like single-cell organisms.
That's like single-cell organisms, Yusuf. My word. All I'm saying is a common descent, and I bring it up now about Lucy, right?
Every species on the planet came from one being, and that includes the human, with the idea that Adam and Eve were a separate creation. Now, the thing is that can you show absolutely that that's the case?
Why don't you bring in a red herring and shift the goalpost now? At no point did I say absolute. Evolution doesn't say absolute. Why would you bring that in?
Because there are similarities. It doesn't write off the fact that God could create us fully as we are, place us into Earth with similarities. Could an all-powerful being create something with similarities, even if it wasn't necessarily a part of that change?
Apparently, God can do anything that's logically possible. Agreed?
Exactly. This is the whole point. I can also say, well, theoretically, it is possible every flash of lightning is created by Zeus. Of course, I can do that. And I can say that it matches everything that we know about physics, that it matches everything that we know about electricity, that everything we know about lightning matches exactly what we see in reality. And I can still claim that this lightning is just there to tease us, but it's actually created by Zeus. Of course I can do that. But is that rational? Is that reasonable to do that? No.
Yeah, and it's the same thing, right? God could have created everything to look like we had a common ancestor, but that's actually not your claim anyway. So why would you go down that route, or attempt to go down this route, or ask me for absolutism? At no point have I claimed absolutism.
Right. So would it be possible for God, even if we take for granted this idea that everything on Earth was created by God and that it did experience this form change, and let's say we even grant that everything else on Earth has this common ancestor, and obviously I'm not accepting that necessarily, but for the sake of argument, let's do that. Is it possible for an all-powerful being, despite this common ancestor and everything?
Because he's obviously a Muslim, and almost every Muslim has to, or seemingly has to, deny common descent, although they're just not doing it, which is
She's coming from this. Is it possible for an all-powerful being to create the human being in such a way that it still shares similarities with the other beings in the universe, and then place it at a particular point in time? Is that possible?
Yeah, of course that's possible, but that is not.
Right, so it doesn't.
Hang on,
it's not.
Yusuf.
No, let me finish the point, and then you can say what you're going to say. So, if it is possible for God to do that, then they're not mutually exclusive.
If nothing has any meaning, why are you wasting your time arguing, not chilling on the beach? Oh dear, we'll just move on. I mean, what a profoundly, incredibly, stupendously ignorant statement, but okay.
Yes, they are.
The idea of evolution...
Because evolution says that something like Lucy was a common ancestor between human and chimps. Do you guys believe that Lucy gave rise to, or was a common ancestor between humans and chimps?
Could you guys not...
They won't answer the question, right? It's like bafflingly astonishing that they won't answer this straightforwardly. I mean, they have, but they just won't answer that question yes or no, right? They just will not do it.
To Adam and Eve and stuff, but yesterday the stream wasn't even...
Can I finish with Yusuf, please? Is that possible?
But the stream wasn't even about...
Jordan, you're just not understanding here. So
okay, we've got Very Smart Cat here. I don't know who Very Smart Cat is.
Hello?
Hello,
Very Smart Cat. Who are you?
You know me.
Hello, who are you?
I just asked to come online not too long ago. It's me, Abdel, you know.
Are you Abel?
Yes. No, Abdel.
Okay. Abdel. Yes, Abdel. Okay, well, welcome, Abdel. You wanted to come on and give a Muslim perspective on this critique.
How are you guys?
I'm pausing it now. What would you like to say?
Just give me 1 second.
You're breaking up a bit as well. I don't know if you're on your mobile phone, you're breaking up a bit. Well, I'll carry on while he's trying to sort it out there. It's not so easy on a mobile phone, as we found out.
We were reviewing yesterday's stream and nothing was mentioned about Adam and Eve. You are imposing that I mean, you said that Hamza can't assume the atheist position. You've basically come on and always
Jordan, you're totally misunderstanding here. And the fact that you've jumped in here just tells me that you're not tracking the conversation. Not a lot I can do if people are going to jump in and not track the conversation, right? I've just got to try and deal with it, I suppose.
out that atheists were talking about.
Is this
I know
Jordan
where you want to get onto. You want to get into the Islamic God because that all your work is
No,
based
I
on
don't
that.
even need to get to this.
But yesterday we weren't even discussing any of that. So you're just kind of
Jordan,
bringing
Jordan, you're not following.
Yeah, I think because Hamza keeps repeating that we're not even talking about God, we're not even talking about Islam. I think other people are hypnotized to believe that that's not what they're talking about, even if the inference is like logically
Now
inescapable.
we've got the next person here.
Say again? No, we haven't invited that person, so don't bring him in, Stops. No,
Okay.
let's take him out. I don't know who that is. You can type in the private chat there and tell us who he is. We only invited in Abdel. Abdel, if you can hear us, let us know. If you're still battling, whoever this person is, they will need to type in the private chat there. We didn't give permission for that. Only Abdel is in. If you want to join, tell us who you are in the chat. We don't want to have somebody jumping in and so forth on here. All right, let me carry on. Yeah, so this was Jordan not understanding the point here, right? And thinking, because Hamza keeps repeating that and not talking about either religion or Islam, that it's not entailed.
Jordan, you're not following along here. Let's just finish with Yusuf.
I'm
Please.
following them perfectly.
Yusuf, do you agree that if Lucy, if evolution says that Lucy was our common ancestor, then that is in conflict with Islam, which says that Lucy was not our common ancestor, and in fact, we just share some similarities, but God created humans, not Lucy bringing humans into
How much
existence.
clearer can I be than that? Is it possible for me to be any more clear? Maybe a human can do it better than that. I mean, I've laid it out that a child would understand.
But
The
you can go
immediate
from
answer.
Lucy, which is 2.5 million, to RD, which is 5 million.
Yeah, but I mean, the immediate answer
But
here
it
should
doesn't
be
change anything, yeah.
no, they're in conflict. One says there's a common ancestor, one doesn't. I mean, the fact that I had to spend so long on this and I really didn't get to the morality thing, which was really the bigger one, it's definitely my mistake. And I just didn't expect them to be so disagreeable on this. It was just, crazy, man.
So there's an issue here. There's an issue here with this idea of categorization. So, for example,
He won't answer the question, right? He could say to me, no, they're not incompatible, and here's why. He will not answer it directly.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
I admitted that it's necessary that there has been change from Adam and Eve up until the present moment.
Like, Yusuf, my dear Yusuf, at any point did I mention anything about or infer or talk about what happened after Adam and Eve? Maybe he doesn't know who Lucy
Abdel
is.
is back
I
with a
don't know.
microphone.
Say again?
Abdel is back with a microphone.
Can you guys
good.
hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
How's the volume?
A little bit low. If you can push it up a bit more, that'll be good. But, I mean, we can hear you.
A little bit louder?
Yeah, if you can.
If you can, yes, that would be great.
Okay.
And my belief is no belief.
Okay, we can go ahead, Abdul.
How about now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go for it.
Better? Okay, good. Okay, so from what I'm seeing, from what's happening with the interactions with the Da'wah team and you guys, it seems like they are more accustomed to more of a sentimental argument, and you guys are more accustomed to a academic, logical argument. So this is the main contention between your style of argumentation and their style of argumentation. And
Abdul, let me ask you something.
yes,
Is the point that I'm trying to ask them, is it clear to you?
very clear, very clear. But the
Okay,
thing is,
you're a Muslim. You're a Muslim, right?
Yeah.
What's your answer to that question before you carry on?
Just reiterate it for me and the audience.
Sure. Do you agree that there is a conflict between evolution, commonly understood as common descent, and the Islamic claim that Adam and Eve were created by God and they did not have a common ancestor? Do you agree that those two ideas are in conflict? They cannot both be reconciled.
Yeah, they're well, they're incompatible. One is
Correct.
to be if one is to be packaged as theology and the other one equally as theology, they would be both incompatible in the realm of theology. Let me explain. If somebody came up to me and said, my theological outlook is evolution, and another person came and said, my theological outlook is creation.
Are you still speaking? Because you've stopped. Either you've broken up or you've.
Two are fundamentally at opposites in the
you're breaking up,
same
Abdel.
realm of discussion.
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit, Abdel. Are you suggesting there's any way to reconcile? I can hear you now, but your words come. Oh, he's dropped out. Okay, you can bring him back again. Okay, should we just carry on in the meantime? Stops. We just go back there and we carry on until he comes back.
So, you know, you have to admit that to be able to admit that there's different races. Like the people that live in Africa.
That's not what we're talking about, though.
No, it is. It's relevant.
That's not
it's
what we're
relevant.
talking about.
I can get
Rob,
to
let him
why
make this point, please.
So,
but if he's making an irrelevant point, do we need to wait for an irrelevant point?
The problem that happens, Rob, is when you do this interruption in this sort of way, when the person's in a mid-sentence, it becomes unnecessarily antagonistic. We're trying to come to an understanding.
I
which
understand
is really
that,
the point.
But Imran, if somebody's off on the wrong track to begin with, do we allow the wrong track to go on, or do
You're on the wrong
put it in
track.
the bud
If you
straight
give
away?
the benefit of the doubt, I'm sure you'd find he's not on the
Because
wrong
he's
track.
equivocating between things that have that look like that we have some similarities with and common descent. That's not the same thing.
I've not even finished making my point. So I don't think you know where I'm going.
Go ahead.
So
pause.
Even if we
okay, Abdel is back. Let's see if the connection is a little bit better now.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Are you ready
Very
to
well.
answer the question, or did you get the question?
I think he did answer, but he broke up while he was speaking.
Yeah, what I was trying to say is that you guys are coming from an evolutionary scientific background in a specific subject, and your position is fundamentally incompatible with their position, even though that the Da'wah team is unable to articulate that for some reason, because I think they are playing an all-sum game where their point of view is making them literally unable to accommodate a conflicting point of view. So you can never really get them to answer any of their questions. This is what it seems like is happening. But that's their fault, because they don't know how to entertain an idea without it like ruining their argumentation. But it doesn't need to be that way. They can entertain an idea, an argument against it, but they seem to be unable to do that. That's from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think that the main point here is that Hamza made a claim, and all I want to establish is that it's incompatible with Islam and the Quran. That's all I want to establish, is that common descent is incompatible with the Quran. That's it. You agree this straight away? You understood that the position, the question, or the point is straightforwardly obvious. How long have we been talking about this where they're dancing around? And now Yusuf wants to tell me about there might have been change to different races after Adam and Eve. That's completely irrelevant. I'm not even worried about what happened after Adam and Eve. All I want to know is whether something happened before Adam and Eve that gave rise to them. Either they were created, or they had a common ancestor, or there's some other explanation that we haven't covered. But those are the two that are under discussion at the moment. Do you agree?
Yeah, from my understanding, this is what you're saying, but they don't seem to be able to entertain the idea, because I think it's very difficult for them, because they don't know how to differentiate that you're coming to them with an evolutionary, like a scientific evolutionary argument, and they're trying to fight back with theology, and they can't change theology, because theology is more rigid than for example, evolutionary science. So, you know, they're putting themselves in a rock and a hard place by just not addressing it for what it is, you know, speaking strictly about evolution. Because if you go into evolution, you can have a much more fruitful dialogue, but what's going on is you're trying to superimpose evolution on their theology, and they're trying to superimpose their theology on evolutionary science. So this is the conflict that's happening. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. It seems like they're unable to differentiate and entertain your position. So this is why you're having a hard time with them.
Brilliant. Accepted.
Oh, stops, you muted yourself.
No, I said brilliant. Accepted.
Okay, let's move on here. But then, unless you want to say something else, I'll move on in the critique here.
Well,
And I'm not saying that Lucy.
Sorry, did you want to say something?
yeah, well, I just wanted to say that this Da'wah team in particular, I don't follow them that often, but when I do watch their videos, their argumentation is not really based on, I would say, 100% consistent logic. You know, it's more feeling based. Their argumentation, when I see them do their street Da'wah arguments with random people, to me it's very difficult to watch their videos because for me it's not intellectually stimulating, nor is it theologically uplifting for me when I watch these guys. It's very difficult to watch these guys. And you know what's more difficult? You know what's more difficult, Rob? For your sake, I feel bad for you when you engage with these guys, because I feel like you're getting frustrated and to your wit's end. And it's very painful to watch. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, I think what would be good for me is for you to go on a stream and discuss this with them and explain to them why they either unsophisticated or not knowledgeable or missing the point or whatever it is, because they're not going to take it from me. And if you're a Muslim, I would be interested in you having a conversation with one or more of these guys, because obviously they're going to be very defensive with me. But if, maybe you can have a conversation, and I'd actually be interested to hear you do that, because obviously atheists will have discussions amongst themselves as well, and I think we need to see more Muslims like you having a discussion with these guys and pointing out what your view versus their view. That would be, if they've made a good point, like if they appeal to the Quran and you might have some other interpretation, I might agree with them, right? But I think there's more of that discussion that needs to happen, and so, yeah.
What do you want to be called? Smart cat?
Yeah, smart cat today.
Okay, smart cat.
Okay.
If you say that you are a Muslim and you are very accurately pointing out the frustration that we are having with these guys, you are a Muslim. How would you advise us to argue or to bring across our points to a Muslim like these guys?
Okay, stop. So I'm just going to step away to the loo quickly. I'll be back in a moment.
What I think is you guys should just stick to the evolutionary biology, the facts to evolutionary biology, and don't mention anything theological and anything scripture. And you can embarrass them even more because you're forcing them to speak your language. You don't want to be trying to speak their language because they'll run around in circles in theological argumentation. And especially to their audience, I would say, is not really interested in a logical argumentation. They're more interested in a one-upmanship based on how they feel about the speaker, really. So if you wanna talk to them about evolutionary biology, stick to the facts. Don't put them in the realm of God, because you can run circles around them if you stay within the scientific argumentation, but they'll be able to run circles around you in the realm of theology, because it's that's how I see it, based on the audience and how they avoid your questions. That's what I see.
That's interesting. So what you are saying, let me just see if I get you right. So what you are saying is I should say, instead of mentioning Adam and Eve, I should just say, look, human beings in general are quite obviously originating from a different species earlier on, which is called the common ancestor. And then ask, do you have any rational explanation for any human being that we know of being created in any other way?
Yeah, I think that's much more compelling, because it forces them to at least read up the material, right? You know how you guys read up the material about Islamic sciences and theology to engage these guys. So if you want to engage them again engage them again in just this field. Do not mix the two up, because there'll be no. Because I don't understand from my understanding, I don't understand 100% what the agenda is for gin and tonic, but it seems like you want to engage Muslims.
Yes.
You want to engage them.
Yes.
I don't think you guys are an Islamophobic organization. Sometimes
Thank you.
sometimes you guys have guests that flare up tensions, and then the other guest adds on to it, and then it's just very bad. But it seems like you want to engage Muslims. So the best way to do it is have them read the literature so you can engage them. You know what I mean? Because that's what you guys do. You read the literature of Muslims and then you engage us.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes you make headway, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you make compelling arguments, in my opinion. Sometimes you don't, in my opinion. But
Okay.
if you want a fruitful, remember fruitful? A fruitful argument.
I remember him,
think,
yes.
I think if you want to have a fruitful argument with the Muslim Dawah team, don't step into the ring with them in theology. Divorce theology from your argumentation when it comes to evolution, because it just leads to nowhere. And if you want to show that your opponent is intellectually inferior, it's better to keep them in one subject matter. This is from what I'm seeing, because that's what I would do if I were to. That's what I would do if I were to engage with you guys.
Okay, but that's excellent constructive criticism, the way that I like it, because this is telling me that we're doing everything wrong, because we are going exactly the opposite way by going into the theology, by going into the text, by going and taking the Quran and then comparing it to reality. So I should do the opposite and leave it open-ended and just go and describe reality, and then let the Muslim go and figure out how he can now go and reconcile this with his book, with his understanding and his theology. Wow. Okay.
Okay, I'm back. Shall we carry on?
Wow, that's brilliant, Rob. This is like really great stuff, and it changes my outlook a little bit. It shows that we are actually doing something very wrong on the gin and tonic with the instinct of creating this monthly theme, but not going and finishing off by going and looking for the counter arguments, that we go and look for the counter arguments in the Quran or the Sunnah or something. No, don't do that. And okay, we can try that. Let's try that and see if it changes something.
Right, let's talk about
for that advice. Thank you. This is really appreciated. This is something good that I need to appreciate, that I need to go and wrap my head around, see how we can change that. And try it. It's worth a try, because obviously just is exactly what you are saying. Some cases we're successful and others not. But I would like to increase the odds. So that's a good approach. Thank you.
Okay, let's carry on then.
Wow, that's excellent.
He is necessarily a descendant. I'm saying that if we do grant that, it doesn't
Rob,
necessarily
I'm totally
fall
fascinated by
loosely
this. Smart Cat, would you be willing to join on Friday?
This Friday for the gin and tonic?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. You guys invited me on Monday, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
That would be great. It would be great to have a Muslim on there who is able to think, and I'm not dissing like Hamza really that much, but it's a different kind of level, if you get my drift. So I would very much appreciate somebody like you who's able to.
Shall we talk about it a bit later? I
just want to make sure that we can do that. Is there any way to get in touch with you? Is there any way that we can contact you? Are you on Facebook? Are you on Twitter or something?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook.
Okay, do you see that in the comments you have two different options? You have comments and then you have the private chat underneath.
Under StreamYard?
So yeah, on the right-hand side you will see comments, banners, brand, and then you should have private chat.
Yeah, he
I'm
might,
sure
if
if
he's
you
on a
do, if
mobile,
you're a guest.
stops. He might be on a mobile. He might not be able to see it.
Ah, shit.
But let's
Because I would
talk
like
about.
you to leave some sort of address, which I don't want you to put like in general, you know, for everybody to see. So I'm looking for a way.
All right. Well, let's see if we can find it while we continue here, or we can stop now. I don't mind either way. But otherwise, let's continue for a while. Maybe see if we can reach the end of my session at least.
Was
All
an
right,
ancestor
then
of, and I don't
let's
know
see
much
what
about
he comes
Lucy,
up
whoever
with.
this individual is, but if there are changes from Adam and Eve onwards, the issue here is imposing this idea of we don't like referring to Adam and Eve and the people that came from him as not being human. So the issue here ends up being one of this modern idea of categorization and kind of imposing this idea of them being lesser beings, because we consider that disrespectful. That doesn't mean that Adam and Eve weren't different. So
This
it
is all
doesn't mean
just rhetoric and sophistry
This is
here
just-
at the
just
moment.
waffling,
Yeah. This is completely vacuous to my claim.
that if you were to see Adam and Eve now, that they would look identical to the human beings that we have here. Because if it follows that there was enough change to go on to give rise to these different races, that every race has experienced a form of change from the original ancestor, from Adam alayhi salam, and Eve, male.
Yeah, Yusuf, again,
So even if Lucy is, and I'm not granting that it is necessarily, but even if we were to say that Lucy is a common ancestor, it doesn't follow that we couldn't refer to Lucy as a human, because this is again a problem of categorization. We're moving on consensus. The scientific community says we want to refer to these as Neanderthals or as whatever. That's an imposition from modern person looking at these things and saying, well, I can see that there's a characteristic distinction between certain features of this being and the modern human, but it doesn't follow from that they're necessarily a completely different species.
I just let him waffle on because they said he wanted to make a point, but this is the problem, right? It's complete waffle. It's nothing to do with the point here, and I'm just sitting here listening, waiting for this to finish, really.
It's just futile, yeah.
Would still be human, just that it's experiencing a different thing. So one is the issue of categorization, and that a lot of it's just imposed. And secondly, it doesn't follow from that even if we were related to Lucy, that Lucy wasn't related to Adam alayhi salam, and that Adam alayhi salam didn't have ancestors. So it's simple.
Is it okay if I say something real quick?
Yeah. So just to conclude, none of that conflicts. If you just
let Hatim say something.
Go on, Hatim.
Yeah, so I actually think this is related to T-Jumps epistemology, which I actually came here to discuss.
Talk about another person going completely off the tangent. Hey, if, it's like almost, okay, shall I leave now? You guys are doing your own thing here. You're just going on random points here. I don't know if Yusuf actually thought he responded to my position.
I think he did. I think he did. I think he thought he's mentioning enough of the words, using enough of the words that you were using to justify this as being called an answer. I don't think so. I mean, because there was nothing that he contributed at all.
Yeah, I didn't see any of the relevance of that whatsoever. All I want to know is, did we have a common ancestor? Something after Lucy to us. That's all I want to know. That's what evolution says. If they say no, fine. But that's what the Quran says. That's all I want is that concession. Do you think any one of these guys will make that straightforwardly clear?
Yeah.
Abdul comes on here and he immediately understands it, and it says
exactly.
Yes,
this
there's
is
a
the
conflict.
Point. Yeah, and this is why in the chat, I mean, he's absolutely right. Muslims are able to think, okay, yeah, sure, but then I said I'm not spoiled. This is why I'm normally dealing with people at the level of Hamza or Jordan or somebody like that. So if you take I don't know, EFDawah or Adnan Rashid or these people, it's frustrating that you cannot talk to these people, but they have such a loud big mouth and they are making so much noise that it's amazing, and you can't get through to them. And you can't get through using rational, logical, whatever reasoning, because they simply don't understand it, and they go and they drown you with total drivel.
Yeah. Right.
But Rob, I suggest you get in touch with him.
Rob, I'm going for another bio break.
Okay.
He's very big on underdetermination. So the idea that like data could lead to various inferences that could equally explain the data. So I'm not necessarily saying that like that's what Yusuf is doing, but it's comfortably accepted in the philosophy of science, and that's a large part of T-Jumps epistemology. And I think it's worth like talking about that.
I'm not here to defend T-Jumps. In fact, I don't agree with his objective morality. You guys just don't quite know how to critique it. He has been well critiqued. I would point you here. I'm on your side in a sense. I don't agree with his objective morality. He's been well critiqued by the philosopher Alex Malpass on that and various other atheists. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm not here to defend his epistemology. What we are talking about is whether common descent can be compatible with a theistic view that Adam and Eve came into existence not from a common ancestor. And what Yusuf said didn't really address my point.
I feel like it did.
Yes, it can. I'll explain to you now. And it's the same limitation that I was talking about before, in that any scientific process is a process that only looks for natural explanations for any observation or phenomena that it comes across. Science itself cannot contemplate a supernatural cause for any event that might occur. So the lens that you're looking at the problem with is necessarily going to give you the conclusion that you have. That this.
Imran, all I'm asking is the common descent as understood by science, is that compatible with the Quran and Adam and Eve coming into existence? How difficult is this really? I mean, it's incredible. Maybe it's my bad communication. I don't think I'm that bad. Maybe I could have made it better. But the fact that you're saying science doesn't talk about the supernatural, that's fine. Let's even, I shouldn't have even gone down the route now that I'm going to go with Sean Carroll and the whole science thing. I should have said, let's say that's the case. If this is the case, that we don't have all I want to know from you, Imran, is do we have a common ancestor? No, we don't. If you go with Abbas, they were brought into existence by God. No common ancestor. We're done. Incompatible. End of story.
This is an incompatible thing. Now, the problem here is that would you be able to, by using science, be able to detect a supernatural intervention in any way?
Yes.
No, you couldn't.
Yes, you can. Shall I give you an example?
Please.
Okay. So if it were the case that Jesus was resurrected and we had the ability to test that, that would be a supernatural claim that science can investigate. The cells recompile, and this dead person, in fact, resurrects after 3 days. That's an event that's happened. It's an extraordinary or perhaps supernatural event, and science can be brought to bear because it's happening in this world and it violates the laws of physics.
No, absolutely not. So this is the problem, Rob. Let me explain to you why. So what you're saying
is
the
fact that he says no, it's just like, okay, let's listen to his explanation. And now remember what my claim was, that we can bring science to bear in principle to go, hey, look at this. These cells, we're not having decay of the cells. They're resurrecting.
You can measure this, of course.
Rob, this is where you made the mistake. You brought Christian concept of resurrection. You should have brought Muslim concept of resurrection. In the Quran, God says he will resurrect the bones.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I was just thinking of something that in the moment. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I could have tried to bring this up. But there's a principle, yeah, I'm guessing you understand the principle, that if we were to observe or to somehow be able to ascertain that here's this body that is resurrecting, that there's no longer decay, but in fact the opposite, and the body then wakes up and stands up, that is likely to be, or more likely to be, especially in the scenario in which it's presented, and the body itself says, hey, I'm God and I've resurrected myself, or however it would speak, that would be evidence in favor of supernatural. The only thing that a Muslim or a theist could say is, well, hey, no, I don't accept that. It could still be something else. But now the Muslim or the theist is taking the ultra-skeptic position, which I'm not taking. So that's a straw man of my position. Now, if somebody else goes that route, fine, then you could debate that with them. I'm not taking that position. I take the same position as Sean Carroll and others, that in principle there's nothing that prevents science from investigating the supernatural.
Okay, here's the one thing. If you can observe the resurrection in a scientific level, doesn't that make it natural, no longer supernatural?
No, but that's the point, right? If something interferes with the natural order in such a way that violates everything we understand, at that point I'm prepared to accept, and so is other people, that there's something supernatural going on, especially if it's some sort of religious claim. If it were the case, Abdul, that every time a Muslim prayed and somebody who had lost an arm and it was a Muslim regrew the arm and we could test this under scientific conditions, I'd be going, hang on a moment, there's something supernatural going on here. There's something going on. There's a link between their prayer and the regrowing of an arm, and it only happens when Muslims do this, and it happens reliably time after time, and we can demonstrate that violates the laws of physics. I'm going to take that as a supernatural, the proof that, or at least certainly evidence in favor of the supernatural claim.
I hear you 100%, but all I'm saying is if you can observe it, it's no longer supernatural. It's natural. That means you can replicate it, right?
Well, no, we can't. How can we replicate the regrowing of a human arm?
Well, that scientific phenomena, we should be able to replicate it in a confined, laboratory.
No, but that's the whole point, right? We can't replicate it.
Yeah, I get it. So that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, once you can say you can reproduce it, it's no longer supernatural. It's now natural. Now it's something that we can all do.
Yeah, but the whole point, though, Abdul, is none of us can do that. It violates the laws of physics, right? The law of entropy, decay, all of that sort of stuff. If somebody resurrects or an arm regrows, and the conditions that humans are operating in, that violates everything that we understand. The only case you could make that you want to counter me is go, well, maybe aliens are doing it. But if it's the case that Muslims are doing it and it only happens directly after a prayer, and we can reliably confirm this time and again, and everybody else prays and nothing happens, I'm going to take that as evidence. Some other atheists might not. So the claim that science can't do it in principle is not a position that I hold. Other people might go, nope, I'm not going to accept anything at all. Even if I saw an arm regrow or somebody raised from the dead, I'm going to think it's aliens or it's some other advanced technology. That's okay, they can do that. I'm not going to do that. But the whole point is I shouldn't have gone down this route anyway. It was a whole long route that, because Imran brought up a point, not understanding the point here, and wanted to go, well, because they want to try and get science and Islam compatible. So one of the ways that they can do that is with this sort of attempt, which is, hey, science isn't, provable, or it's not absolute. So it could be wrong with the inference that, hey, science might one day agree with the Quran. That's all we're waiting for. And you can do that if you want, but it's not a position that I think is intellectually honest.
You're asserting that we will have an ability to do something that we currently don't have the ability to do. And if we had this ability to do this thing, that this would allow us to look at something that science cannot look at fundamentally on a principle level. There is, even if you found that, yes, this cell regenerated after it was dead, let's say you had this ability to do this, that science has to find a natural explanation for this occurrence. It cannot, because it's the principles of science, assert that this is a supernatural event. Why? Because what's the basis of science? That everything requires a natural explanation. You're stuck within this ballpark. You're stuck within this fence.
This is what they want us to be stuck in, right? Because if they're stuck in this, then we can't appeal to science to disprove the claims of in reality, right? So if something happens in reality, Muhammad flies up, or the moon gets split. If they can try and discount science, which is what Imran and his crew want to do, well, then what have we got? We've got no way to counter them. They could just claim that it's true by eyewitness testimony or some other method, and we've got nothing to say against it. No, I'm not going to accept that. Sorry, I don't know about stops.
This guy's a doctor. He should know how to think. He's been to varsity. He should know how to apply critical thinking. How can he make this line of reasoning?
I told you, I think because they want to remove science from supernatural claims, because if they can do that, then they feel safe that they can keep making extraordinary or supernatural claims, and we haven't got a reliable method to disprove it, and then they can pat themselves on the back. I'm not going to let them get away with that, but I don't believe it anyway, so it's not about getting away with it.
But then this Imran guy is a total hypocrite.
I'm not sure how, though. How's that?
Because he is, on the one hand, we can't go... I mean, on the one hand, he should be arguing rational... in a logical, rational, and reasonable way, and come to the conclusion that if you have evolution as a medical doctor, he must understand that the theory of evolution is valid, it is a fact, and that it does work. And now he's saying, no, it doesn't.
No, well... I'm not sure he's saying that stops. He's just saying that we can't use science to prove or disprove the supernatural. He's not even talking about evolution at the moment. He wants to try and square evolution somehow with the Quran, which I don't think can be done. But I mean, I think I've given the example, right? And he's going, no, you can't do that by default, and I'm just disagreeing with that.
No, you can't by default, but he should be able to go and say, all right, I've got a scientific theory here, and this scientific theory clashes with what we see in the Quran. Now, he cannot go and say, what we see in the Quran must be correct, and therefore I can disregard the theory of evolution because I'm a medical doctor. That doesn't work. He must be able to see that, given a tertiary education, that it is not possible. This is what I'm saying. I'm just saying that somebody who has received or enjoyed, or whatever you want to call it, tertiary education, should be able to understand what it means to have rational thinking. It
Yeah, but
doesn't go
stops.
with that.
Stops. What you're ignoring is that he believes in miracles, and he can still believe in evolution or some version of it, and just claim that evolution doesn't apply to humans, which is what they are saying. But that then means that evolution and human ancestry is false. But he will say, yeah, I accept science is great, but I just think that humans were a miracle event. So you're ignoring that. That's what he accepts, right? So he can, in his own mind, get away with saying, hey, humans were a miracle event, but hey, I accept all the rest of science, even if it isn't, quote, provable or absolute or whatever terms, right?
As a medical doctor?
Well, I mean, how many? There's thousands, probably a lot more than thousands, that believe in the magical, creation of Adam and Eve, and still get on with medicine.
But here's the difference: the many people who believe in creation and they're practicing medical doctors, they practiced medicine, they studied the discipline, and they don't necessarily go around saying, for example, creation supersedes science, because their training doesn't allow them to do that. You understand what I mean?
Yeah,
I
know.
understand what you mean, but what I'm saying is it's not the fact. It is the line of reasoning. It is the way of thinking. He should be able to have the capability, at least, to apply rational thinking. And that supersedes this whole idea of creation of Adam and Eve.
Well, obviously, in his view, they don't, right? He thinks they can be compatible.
And that is why I'm sitting here speechless. I can't believe it. Okay.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is, here's what the evolutionary idea says. Now he's going, well, science can't demonstrate that. At the moment, all we're going is, hey, here's what the idea is. Whether it can be demonstrated or not, or it's perfect or whatever, is irrelevant. If this idea, as it's understood and defined, is the case, then it is incompatible with Adam and Eve being magically brought into existence.
Yeah,
That's it really isn't that difficult.
If you want to talk about the supernatural, you have to leave science behind, in the sense that it's not the tool to use to do this.
He said it himself. There we go.
No.
But stops. That is what these guys are pushing for. That's what because once they get people to agree that, then they can quite happily and safely keep believing in their miracle ideas, and in their mind we haven't got a tool to challenge them on that. They can now safely go to bed and believe that, and then get up and do medical work in the morning.
This is a good counter. This is a good counter. You know what you could say? You cannot simultaneously believe in a form of evolution and creation at the same time, because then you are essentially saying that humans were created by natural beings, or
which you're not allowed to. And this is the point that I'm trying to make. This reminds me of what Dr. Yasser Qadhi said is the red line. They are not allowed to cross that red line. This is what we're facing here once again.
Abdul, there is a way around this, right? What they could do, I'm not saying Muslims would do this, or maybe there's one or two outlying Muslims. Christians have done this. We know this, right? Which is that, hey, God got the universe started, and he used evolution as his mechanism, and in fact common descent is true, and there was no two first humans in the sense that they were created by Adam and Eve. So the Adam and Eve story is an analogy.
And it's guided evolution.
Yeah, well, it's guided, in a sense. So that's the way you can get around it.
The only way I can reconcile with it is to say that Adam and Eve is in fact evolution. It can't be evolution and Adam and Eve, unless I'm trying to say that, humanity was created by, the Anunnaki, like genetically modified. That's a whole different belief system.
It's straightforward in the Quran, right? It was created from blood clots or clay or whatever combination you want, right? That counts as the idea of evolution anyway.
30 meters tall.
Yeah, if you're going to go with that as well. That also violates, evolution, because that would actually disprove it. If we found bones of hominids that were 30 foot tall, and it was exactly the time frame, we could date it to the time, supposedly, whatever that time is, of Adam and Eve, however we're supposed to work that out, that would disprove evolution. Now you've got 30 foot tall people, or 90 foot tall, sorry, 30 meters or whatever it is. Is that right? 30 meters?
Yep.
Yeah, 30 meter tall humans. That would disprove evolution straight away. Here we would have an insertion. So that were the case, I would stop believing in evolution. And so I would imagine so would anybody else, because that would falsify common descent, or at least it would falsify humans if it was a human rather than some other alien creature. If we could establish that was just a giant version of us, that would be hugely problematic, because now we have something that doesn't follow. It's like rabbits in the Precambrian, which was always the smug comment. How do you disprove evolution? Well, find me rabbit bones in that Precambrian, right, where rabbits cannot be. That would falsify. It's the same thing here.
The underwater hairdryer example is exactly relevant here. You can't use a hairdryer when you're under the water, and that's what
begins
you
with axioms and then moves from that.
How do we establish a supernatural event happen in this universe if we do not use the scientific method?
The way that we've always established how supernatural events occur when the scientific method wasn't even in existence.
How do you establish it?
How everything is established. Mostly
There you
established by
go.
testing.
There you go. You see, that's what they want. All I had to do was coax him a little bit to get it right. What they want is to have supernatural claims through eyewitness testimony that cannot be in any way tested, and you've got to take it on faith. Amazing. And of course, when you press it a bit further, of course we accept eyewitness testimony, but no court, and even, well, I wouldn't say no court, I mean no normal court that doesn't accept the supernatural as a default position is going to accept that. So if somebody came along and said, hey, I saw, Mary, or whatever it might be, right? Nobody's going to accept that as reliable eyewitness testimony, and they shouldn't. Whoever said it, whether it was a Muslim saying something or a Christian or whatever the case is. But that's what he wants, right? To eliminate this scientific inquiry so that they can just say, hey, well, somebody saw it, you can't disprove it, therefore I'm justified in believing it. And that's terrible.
Especially from a medical doctor.
Testimony for a supernatural event.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll elaborate a bit further then.
No, you don't need to. Please, Imran, you don't need to elaborate. I understand the point. And Sean
Okay.
Carroll and other philosophers disagree with you.
Well
and in fact, in his book, The Big Picture, Sean Carroll specifically talks about this and says there's nothing in science that precludes us investigating quote-unquote supernatural or extraordinary events. And he uses the example of people being, coming out of their graves supposedly when Jesus resurrected and all these other zombies wandering around. Science can investigate that it's happening in this world. It violates the laws of physics. And we could at that point say, if we could test it, the principle of science can still be used there and shown that, hey, this is a non-naturalistic event.
So,
right, but then because you prove zombies didn't rise.
Trust Hamza to come in and make a completely irrelevant point.
I didn't hear. Hamza said something. I didn't hear what he said.
Oh, sorry. I said, could science prove zombies didn't rise? If it's a supernatural event?
Could it prove that they didn't rise?
No, but you've just done exactly what you've done. You've looked for a natural
Yeah, I
explanation.
mean, he just came out of left field and I'm going, what the fuck are you talking about, right? I'm like, it takes me like a few seconds to try and focus in on
the level, yeah.
yeah, it's not always easy.
Unbelievable.
You've ignored the possibility of a supernatural.
I am saying.
Sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say this is the part where you lost points in their audience because it made it seem like Yusuf had a logical rebuttal or a counterpoint that you had no answer to. You should have addressed it.
Which part? Sorry.
When he came out with, I frankly didn't understand it, but I did understand that he thought he got a gotcha moment.
Yeah, if you can tell me
Hamza
where.
Said what this insert that Hamza made?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. About what I can't disprove, science can't disprove zombies.
Yeah, because like I said, these guys are not trained in anything remotely scientific except the medical doctor, but also the audience isn't. So when he came up with that rebuttal, it seemed like you had no answer to it.
Yeah,
From an emotional point of view.
Yeah, it was a completely ridiculous rebuttal because it's nothing to do with the point. Remember, the point was.
The point. No, but SmartCat has a point because the thing is they are not looking at facts. They are looking at emotions. They're looking at feelings. They're looking at confirmation bias and things like that. And there, I agree, a Muslim can see you did not immediately have an answer. You were stumped. And this is the impression that the people are getting. You see, Hamza owned you. And I can understand that. Absolutely correct, yeah.
Yeah, but then all I have to do is ask a Muslim, how did he do so? And
Yeah,
if his
but then you're
response
being
is because you
rational
didn't
again.
answer,
See,
that's
this is
obviously not
emotion.
a...
Yeah, Rob, this is emotions.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
well,
the point. I also miss this. I also miss this all the time. It's about emotions, feelings, how the perception, how people
Yeah, that's
see.
irrelevant to me. That's irrelevant
Yes,
to
it
me. And
is,
if
but not to him and not to the people
okay,
watching.
but those people then cannot be convinced by definition, right? They are being irrational, they're being emotional, and not rational. And
The
those
point
people
is not to
are
convince
outside of
them.
my zone that I can have a conversation with.
Rob, it's not about convincing the people. It is about taking the idols away.
Okay, well, I mean, that's a different approach. I want to do that through rational conversation, and if I can't do it through there, then maybe I need to find another way, or you've got a different way. I don't want to...
Combine them. No, you're absolutely on the right track. But I'm learning from SmartCat here because this is true. I need to go and look at the audience. I'm not going to convince Hamza, definitely not. But the audience is seeing me as the enemy. So if I go and I just very calmly make my points one by one and show that Hamza is unable to answer them, that Hamza is the one, because I had him stuttering. And this is the point that people made. This is the point that people saw, that Hamza was stuttering. He didn't know how to answer. And that is the point that we need to get to. This is so correct.
Okay, so let me ask both of you. When Hamza said what he said, what would you said? Obviously, it's easier in hindsight. So what would you say?
SmartCat, go first.
Well, if I was arguing with is it Imran or Yusuf?
No, it's Hamza.
No, but he jumped in.
I know.
Who were you talking to for the majority of the?
Okay, for just before that, it was Imran, and he was making the point that science can't investigate supernatural claims.
So when I'm just going back to how historically when I get into arguments, if I'm directing my points to somebody and somebody chimes in, I turn to them and tell them, don't interrupt me, depending on my mood. If it's a heated moment, I could come off as rude or polite, depending on how serious it is. But just simply addressing him and saying, don't interrupt me, I'm talking to Imran for a minute, that's enough to dismiss what he just said, in my experience. Because I argue with lots of people, not argue, sometimes discussion, and it turns into an argument. But when I'm focused at my points and at the person that I'm directing these points, I just have like a knee-jerk reaction to not allow somebody to interrupt me. But it's kind of different when you're doing it on, honestly, it doesn't even feel the same. But when you're doing it online, it's very hard to kind of project and anticipate people's presence. You know, it's like...
I mean, you can sidestep the question and just ignore it or go back to the other guy. I've done that a few times already. So I suppose I could have said that and go, hey, I'm speaking to Imran now. Sure. But I can't prevent him from asking the question.
Okay, can I add one? If you go, and I need to learn this myself, to go and say, if somebody interjects, go and say, I can understand that you are emotional about this point, but can we just leave this at the moment that I'm speaking to Imran, and I'll deal with you later. You are doing two things. You are telling Hamza to shut up. You are telling Imran that you can carry on. So this is putting Hamza in his place emotionally, and at the same time showing that you are the one who is in control of the situation, that you are saying, I'm now talking to Imran, I will talk to Hamza later, I will address the point, but at the moment just shut up and let me handle the question.
100%. You said it way better than when I was trying to explain it. 100%.
Yeah, I mean that's one way.
Understand, but to do this in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, that's one way I could have gone. The other is I could have said to him, "How's that relevant?"
Yeah, that would.
But then you're already giving him credibility.
Yeah, that's another point. Yeah.
Peter, I'm saying that if a zombie or Jesus is resurrected, the principle of science can be brought to bear, because what we would eventually be forced to admit is that it violates the laws of physics, and this is an extraordinary or supernatural claim. So the claim that science cannot investigate the supernatural, people like Sean Carroll and others disagree, and I'm in agreement with that.
I still don't understand. So how would you differentiate then? How would you know if it was supernatural or not?
Okay, I'll explain to you again. Because the natural process is one of entropy, decay, right? And if it were the case that you could violate this law, then we could.
Yeah, but do you believe it happened though?
No other way that this could happen.
What happened? Do I believe it happened? I mean, oh dear.
But then we could
No, this-
legitimately say that, hey, this is an extraordinary or supernatural event. How could this possibly
so-
happen? In
so
every
Robin,
scenario.
come back to you on that, please. So the problem here is what you're doing is you use the word what you use the word actually when you're talking to Hamza is the word eventually. Now what you mean by
Do these guys not understand the principle?
No.
They're now
No.
now he's going to bring up a pragmatic or answer but Sam Harris talks about this a lot. Lots of people confuse answers in principle with answers in practice.
Yeah.
Because the fact that he jumped onto eventually, he's now going to make an answer, and he's going to make a practical objection to a principle point, which is a category error.
this is what I'm taking you to mean by this. Obviously, you could tell me that I'm misunderstanding you.
It's just a
Is that
principle.
when you're doing the process of the science, and you see something that does not explain by your current level of knowledge, what you're going to do is you're going to look for explanations. And initially, your explanations are going to be the ones that are natural as far as you understand. Then you'll get to the stage where none of your theories that you currently hold as being good working models of how the universe works, when none of them apply to this, then the natural conclusion is, okay, we have to adjust our theories before we can then come up with an answer to what is happening here. What you're not going to do is, as an initial step.
Nobody
okay,
said it's the first step anyway.
No. As soon as we exhaust all possibilities, we go and we open up to any other possibility. If we go and if we want to find a situation, if we want to find an explanation to a specific situation, we cannot limit ourselves just because we don't know the explanation immediately. That is not how we work.
I just want to say, Rob, when you're explaining, you sound phenomenal. You're putting points on top of points on top of points. You shouldn't let somebody interrupt you, especially if you're on a streak. You know, you should direct your energy at finishing your thoughts. You know, because
That's difficult though, as you can see with 5 people on here, right?
Yeah, I know it's difficult. I know. I wish you the best. I know you're having a hard time and you're frustrated. And
I thought I think it went okay. I just here's one of these points where it was just
because he
irrelevant.
interrupted you for bullshit. He literally interrupted you.
This is a whole tangential point anyway that Imran brought up, not understanding the point that I was making with Yusuf anyway. So Dave is just saying the entropy can be violated. I think, Dave, all I was thinking is something like, the decay of once somebody had died. That's what I'm thinking about as entropy being violated, i.e. that it stops decaying and starts rejuvenating would be a way. And that to me would look like, I could be using the wrong word, but that would look like a violation of entropy, or certainly the laws of physics. Every single person that we've ever known of dies. Once they're dead, they start to decay. And if that were the case, that after a period of time when we could establish that when it wasn't like near death or something, and they resurrected, then that for me, and it was in line with particular claims, then that would be evidence in favor of it. I'm not going to go, oh my God, Allah exists now. What I am going to go is, hey, here's evidence in favor of a God. That's scientific evidence in their favor. That's my view. Other people can disagree, of course. That's fine.
Yeah, but the other thing that you need to appreciate, today we are finding that there are things that we need to question. We're even questioning the conservation of energy, because in some instances it does not make sense. So people are now starting to question things which are fundamental, which have been true for the last 100 years or so. So science is not limited. Science does not limit itself. If something doesn't work, well, then go and chuck it out and find something better. This is the way that it works.
Yeah, in the last 3 years in the Muslim community, there's been fierce discussions in the trenches, you know what I mean? Like, in the last 3 years, this is what I've noticed amongst people who enjoy talking about these things. And honestly, I think it's very good, because I think for the first time...
I'll be back in 1 sec. Keep talking.
Yeah, I think it's for the first time in a very long time, people are actually using their brains, because I've had arguments with people like this Dawah team in the past, and it's very frustrating.
But do you go and actually tell them, listen, guys, you need to up your game, or you need to change something?
Yeah, only when they become rude and irrational.
Okay, because I think that must be quite tough to go and change their ideals or change the way that they're, the line of argumentation, because this is the only way that they have. They have to be loudmouth.
I'll give you an example. You guys are arguing over very broad topics, like within the Muslim community. We argue on very, very technical. We differ on a very minute, technical,
correct,
painstaking, like differences, and it turns into exactly how you and Rob argue with these individuals. Same spirit. We face the same spirit in some circles with these people, and it's like very painful.
Okay.
This is something we can't explain. It must be supernatural. Now, what you're asserting in your argumentation is this is something that's quite readily done. Now, there's been lots of instances. So even with if you go to sort of quantum events where things are appearing and disappearing, there was never this straight away initial assertion this is a supernatural event. The idea even now is we need to understand how and why this is happening. Yeah. And the idea is still to look for a natural explanation to these things that look amazing, like this particular.
I agree, Imran. I agree with that. But what I'm saying in principle is that we can have a position, I've given you an example, where we exhaust it and we can observe, in principle, that the laws of physics have been violated, i.e. that something non-natural has occurred.
So then your position would be we would need to adjust our understanding of.
You see, he's trying to force the view that we have to change, and I'm saying no. He just doesn't get it. He's not accepting it. It was shouldn't have really gone down this. They're just not going to accept it because they want to have. And we've heard it out of his own mouth anyway. He wants to have the position where science cannot be brought to bear on miracles. Then it makes them feel safer, right? As long as science can be brought to bear, they've got to somehow explain this, or they've got to take it on faith or whatever. If you remove that, well, hey, then they can take it on because, eyewitness testimony. I would never accept eyewitness testimony for supernatural claims, but hey, these guys have got a lower standard than me. What can I say?
You wouldn't go to supernatural. So science
not the first point,
is a natural world with natural explanations, and the supernatural is definitionally outside of this.
No.
So I don't know. You're trying to combine the two together, and I think that's disingenuous.
I don't think there's much more we can say on it, Stops. I think.
Exactly.
Let's let it run now.
Record.
We'll leave it at that.
Can I just ask Rob one last question, please? Rob, can I just ask you one last question?
Yeah,
if God exists, could he violate the very laws of physics?
Of course. And that's what we would call a supernatural event, right? And science could be brought to bear on that.
Right, but how would science, using the tools of observation and always asserting a material...
It is in the premise of the question. Always asserting.
Cause, non-supernatural, be able to come to the conclusion of it being supernatural?
Again, Abbas, I've just said to you, there are people like Sean Carroll and other philosophers that do not take that position.
I'm asking you, Rob. I'm asking you.
I'm in agreement with them, Abbas, that we could use the science, the principle, properly construed, and if somebody could resurrect, or its arm regrew, it was prayed for, and somebody's arm regrew, and it happened, multiple times, we could legitimately say, here's a supernatural event. It's what's the most reasonable explanation.
Can I ask a question quickly, Imran, if you don't mind? Then you can do the counting. Do you think Jesus rose from the dead?
It's just a shame that we never got to the morality thing. Maybe some other time.
You're making me into an alcoholic. I'm having my second beer.
Rob, what's the purpose of this engagement?
No, of course not.
Sorry, what's this?
What's the background information? Like, what's the purpose of this engagement? What compelled you to talk with these guys?
Because they were reviewing a live stream they had where it was answering atheists, and they had these 3 points that they brought up. Stop spamming was on. Stops that's on here. A guy called T-Jump from the US, and I think there was somebody, and Pio was the other guy that was on, and they had a conversation with him, and it was around these 3 points. I wasn't able to be on that, and anyway, Stops did a great job, and so did T-Jump, and so on. So we decided to do a review on this, and so we did a review of the original stream. They did a review of the original, and we're now doing a review of their review. Or when I jumped on, because I jumped onto their review of the stream itself after they had talked for about an hour and 3 minutes or somewhere around there.
I'm not allowed anymore.
Yeah, they won't have Stops now. They banned him because he's quote unquote Islamophobic, and he attacks Islam, whatever that's supposed to mean. Anyway.
It means you're hurting their feelings.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately what it translates to, yeah.
No, they've run out of ideas.
There's no good reasons to believe that.
Well, the people claimed it happened.
Yeah, so eyewitness testimony. Are you going to accept that for an extraordinary claim?
No, I'm asking you though.
I don't accept eyewitness testimony for any
Why not?
claim.
But so how would you differentiate between
I mean, it's so obvious,
That's perfectly correct. Yes.
something being supernatural and natural, and it maybe
I
was
just explained it,
supernatural?
haven't I? Like I went through examples of how one could differentiate them.
Something that violates the laws of physics would be a
So
good starting
you've done
point.
exactly what we said you would do. You would go for the naturalistic explanation.
Like, has he not been listening at all?
Because obviously, rising from the dead
Question
does
I
violate.
asked Hamza, which is on this. But Rob, we've had a good time with you. It's been an enjoyable conversation.
I
I'm
just
just
wanted
ask you one
one
last
more thing,
question, please. And that question is a very straightforward one. And I'd like a yes or no answer, but I know that's unfair to ask for that. So the question is this: can science posit supernatural causes for observations?
What do you mean by supernatural causes?
Exactly.
Self-explanatory.
I think the question is self-explanatory. So
Well, obviously it's not for me.
can science posit
It's
supernatural causes for observations?
What is a supernatural cause, please?
What
I
is
don't know what
that?
that is.
Come on, Rob, please.
He doesn't want to answer it now, right? He
How
thinks
do
if
you
I say
discover-
yes,
how
then
do you
I've
detect supernatural. Tell me how to detect supernatural, and I'll give you an answer.
yeah. He thinks if I say yes, then I've refuted myself, right? I want to know what supernatural is, and once he tells me, then I
That's
can tell
very
him.
good that you did not commit to it, and that's it. Yeah.
We spent all this time talking about supernatural, and now you're asking me what supernatural is.
Yeah, what is a supernatural
In a
cause?
scientific point of
Something
view.
that's
yeah.
outside of nature.
So it violates the laws
Well,
of
then you
physics.
can't.
Something that's outside of nature. So what do you answer my question if you can, please?
Yeah, but your question is poorly phrased. That's why I'm asking you for clarification.
So what do you think supernatural is?
Something that violates the laws of physics.
Okay, so can science posit something that is
Okay.
supernatural as
That's
a
where
cause for an observation?
Imran, that's where the grammar of your question is incorrect. It doesn't posit that. It posits a natural explanation, and it can be brought to bear on something that is supernatural. So the grammar of your question is incorrectly phrased by my
So
eyes.
thank you for answering the question, Rob. I really appreciate that. So
I wanted one last thing with you guys because we've gone off on tangents. But if you want to cut it short, that's fine.
Yeah.
okay,
What
no worries.
I'd like to
Come on
do,
again.
Rob,
We'll have reviews of other streams we'll do.
Yeah, I want to do the objective morality with you because I thought that was in fact by far your weakest point. But if you don't want
No
to
problem.
deal with that,
Come
with me
again,
now, that's
Rob.
fine.
We appreciate that.
but Rob, I invite you onto Hamza's Den in 2 weeks' time with Sabora and me and Imran.
Okay, listen to this,
we're-
guys. Listen to this closely now.
We're going to do evolution in detail.
Well, evolution is okay. Hamza,
It'd be
answer
great
your
to have you
question.
on to that
Let me,
stream.
right, let me answer your question. Evolution is not my expertise. I'm happy to come on, Hamza, in even of that, and then with the condition that you and Sabura come and join us on the Gin and Tonic and defend Islam. How's
No,
that?
we're not. We're not going to do
Oh, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
No.
You don't want to. You're allowed to have your
Good
space,
one.
Hamza. You're allowed
That's
to,
a good
and you
one.
can even bring Sabura with you to help you out. How's that?
No,
I
we're not
don't
going
even
to come
remember
on.
this. Wow.
All the best, Rob. You take care. We'll
Take
speak
care,
soon.
Rob.
All right, I think we'll leave it there for tonight.
That was good. That was good. I don't remember you doing that.
I just wanted to have it out there in the open, right?
Excellent.
So there we go.
Look how
We'll carry on
quickly
No,
again.
very good. You know what you should do? You should record that and you should chop it up and turn it into a meme.
Oh man, oh man, oh man. It's amazing.
Yeah, I haven't got the time or inclination for that, but other Muslims will hear it. We'll
Can't
hear it
you,
here
say-
anyway.
Speak up a bit.
Who's that?
Okay, you're very soft. I don't know what you did.
Oh, I didn't know. Sorry.
No, now you're just quieter, but now it's the whole volume is lower. I don't know what you did.
I don't know either. Let me just see here. External microphone, 1, 2, 3. No, should be fine. I don't know. Something happened with StreamYard, I guess. All right, guys, let's call it there. It's getting late anyway.
Okay, is there any Muslim in the chat now who wants to challenge us? Because I saw a couple of comments from people here now and there. Is there any Muslim on the chat who thinks that they have what it takes to refute us in any way?
I will defeat all of you, single-handedly. You cannot stand against my logic.
I don't know how you could be a Muslim, really. I don't know. Okay, I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah. Just a reminder there, Abdul, I think Smart Stops was looking for your contact info. If you can pop that in the private chat there real quick. We'll bring it to a close now, but once we close it, we won't have access to that. So if you've got some contact details there that Stops can get hold of you, then pop it in the private chat.
Because I'd like to get you on the show on Friday, if that is possible. Well, maybe not this Friday, because this Friday we're doing a special viewer request, but definitely the week after. Because there's somebody else who wants to come on, this Hussein guy. and he is a more fundamentalist Muslim, so that would be fun.
Oh, very good.
With you, I don't know. From what I hear from you,
I am an Islamist.
yeah, that's a good one. I don't know. There's so many things that I would like to pick your brain on. I would like you to show us the Muslim, let's say, attitude and the spectacles, the Muslim spectacles on the Gin and Tonic show. That would be great. That would be perfect. So, because the thing is, you know how to articulate yourself, you know how to speak, you know how to listen, you know how to analyze, you know how to
thank
do.
you very much.
So those are the good things which we're looking for, which normally we don't find. So, yeah.
Oh man, you killed me, man.
No, excellent. No, because it's very rare now. We just found this Mustafa who's really good, who also has these things, and this is very rare to have people like that, and this is why. Yeah. No, we're not talking about your phone number. We're just talking like I don't know. Do you have some social media address? Do you have some Twitter or Facebook or Reddit?
Yes.
Or,
Yeah. I have a Facebook. I'll send it to Rob and I'll send it to you because I think I have I think I have you stops on my Messenger. Yeah, I think I have.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah. Then go and do it. Absolutely, that would be absolutely fantastic. Really, because I'd like to have you on. Yeah, HQ. I don't know because he was bragging before. Yeah. I'll kill you all. Of course, I would love to do this.
Who was saying that?
HQ 456.
All right, well, maybe he'll come back at some point. Cool. All right, guys, I want to thank you both for coming on. Thank you, as always, Stops, for going right the way through. Thanks for coming on, Abdul, and sharing a few thoughts. Thank you to all the viewers. We will be back at some point, may or may not be this week, but we'll be back for part 3 of this with an expert. And I want to thank everybody, and we will see you again very soon.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Good night.